Thank you. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Brighton Area Schools Board of Education meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Ms. Hackett, roll call, please.
Mr. Conley?
Here.
Ms. Reed?
Here.
Mr. Trombley?
Here.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Here.
Dr. Krebs?
Here.
Mr. Stahl?
Here.
Mr. Myers?
Here. That takes us to the next item on our agenda, which is the approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Stahl,
Support.
supported by Ms. Reed. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 7-0. That brings us to the call to the public. For those of you who have not been to our meetings before and are familiar with our call to the public protocol, we have cards at the back of the room that you can fill out and put the card in the box there that's on the table in front of Mr. Engelter. I will call up the person who is next to speak and identify who the person will be next. And you will have 3 minutes to address the board. Dr. Krebs will be keeping track of the time. She will give you a yellow card to indicate when you have 30 seconds left, and she will give you a red card when your 3 minutes of time is up. We have experimented in past meetings of splitting up call to the public for agenda versus non-agenda items. For tonight, we just have one call to the public. It's regarding any topic, agenda or non-agenda. And so without any further ado, we will start. The first card that I have is Jason Barrett. After Mr. Barrett will be Nicole Colors. And those are the only two cards I have if anybody planned on speaking at the call to the public.
Hey there. So my name is Jason Barrett. I have 2 kids enrolled in Brighton schools. And my concern is if there's like some kind of a COVID book, something that tells me when the schools are going to shut down or what criteria there is that's going to allow the schools to be shut down for 2 weeks and then prematurely reopened after 7 days with no explanation whatsoever. Does that exist? If not, I would like to also ask about the masking and how it is that teachers have the authority to put in place some kind of masking on their classrooms. This occurred at Maltby School, where a teacher's classroom or combined class had a masking mandate, I guess, for lack of better words, on their class only for 2 weeks. What drives that decision by those teachers, or what allows them the authority to put those mask mandates in place? Does anyone have an answer to that question? Okay, so with that, then I would like to propose that the board authorizes parents on their authority only to not require their kids to mask. Does anyone have an issue with that? Currently, as it states, you have to have your doctor's approval or a doctor's approval, right, through the health department is the only way to say, I don't want my kid to be masked at school. Why is that? Why don't the parents have the authority to say, my kid shouldn't be masked at this school? Nobody? Dr. Outlaw?
Well, this is the time for you to address the board, and you have 3 minutes. If Dr. Arlo, if you care to respond. Sure.
I can if you would like me to, or?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. to a couple of the questions here. Yeah, we have, there are some guidelines on what we would do in certain circumstances regarding COVID-19. Obviously, we've used those throughout COVID. There's a specific thing called a targeted intervention plan. I think that's what you're referring to. And what would we do if there are clusters of cases? So if we were in a classroom and we had 3 or 4 cases, what were the interventions that we might use? So that's one part. The masking for individual classrooms. We do not have a mask mandate as a district. We have not all year. It's always been parental choice. But if there is a cluster, of cases within a classroom, beginning with the health department, there are times when targeted interventions are in place when there is a cluster of cases. So with the Omicron spike that took place in January, there were classrooms that had targeted interventions during the month of January. Thankfully, we are past that spike. But during that time period, there were targeted interventions. There were, obviously, we had Scranton Middle School had a targeted intervention. We did have classrooms where there were clusters of cases where we recommended to have masking for those classrooms during a period of time.
Okay, so brings me back to my question then about why isn't it up to the parents to make that decision for their children, what's best for their children, right? It shouldn't be up to a teacher or their class, especially when it comes back to me from my child that one kid was out of their classroom the first day of the masking mandate. I mean, that doesn't make sense. One kid out of 28, that shouldn't be targeted for any kind of intervention. And when it comes
3 or more
when
within
it
a
comes
10-day
to
stretch.
Scranton Middle School, there were the email that was sent out when Scranton was shut down for 2 weeks said 16 kids. 16 kids out of how many? 400, 500, 600. It's like 2% of the kids are out. And how many of those actually tested positive? It was like 3 kids. So there is no guide. There is no playbook that you guys are actually following. That's my disappointment with what's going on here. That's why I say the parent should be allowed to say, yes, my kid should wear a mask, or no, my kid shouldn't. That's the point I want to make.
Thank you. Ms. Collins?
Good evening, Nicole Colors. I don't know if this is proper for parents to do, but I would like to make a recommendation for the Shining Star Award. Mrs. Teagan at Horning and Maltby, the crossing guard, she was amazing during the incident. I'd also like to include with them the Horning and Maltby staff and Dr. Outlaw and I believe Mrs. Ackermite. I mean, having been through this myself with my school, I was amazed that we were getting emails as quickly as we did. I was amazed by how everyone reacted. Like, it couldn't have been any more perfect. I know it was a situation where it was the end of the day and you just can't plan ahead for that kind of stuff. But everybody did exactly what they were supposed to do, and it was the best possible outcome. Second thing, I would like to commend Dr. Heinonen at the high school. The 9th graders are starting To Kill a Mockingbird, which is a controversial book. She sent out an email to all the parents saying, this is what we're reading. Here's all the lessons. Here's all the work. This is where it can be found, and laid everything out. Complete transparency. It was awesome. The field house. I have kids at Horning, and this morning the cranes were operating, lifting beams, and my kids loved it. We sat in the parking lot for 10 minutes watching the cranes. It was like the best part of their day. So that's exciting. We get to see that every day, for a while at least. Reading and literacy. So the new studies are coming out, and more information is coming out regarding masking and the effects that it's having or will have on literacy. And I know I've spoken to all of you before regarding this. The CNN resident doctor even said you cannot ignore the consequences of masking. So it's pretty bad when even CNN says this stuff. Consider new hires for reading, literacy, early intervention programs. I think that's something very serious that needs to be considered in future budgeting, because these young kids, Michigan law says you have to read by 3rd grade. And 3rd and 4th graders right now, they're not doing so hot. Please consider that when you make your budgets. Thank you.
Thank you. I've had only 2 cards. Was there anyone else that wanted to address the board this evening? All right, that will close the call to the public, and we'll move us to the next item on the agenda, which is the superintendent report. Dr. Outlaw.
All right. So I'm going to begin by, I'm going to invite Mrs. Evans to the front here, and I'm going to bring some certificates up. I'm just going to shining stars here for us.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Evans. I am the band and orchestra teacher at Scranton Middle School. Gabriel Moore and Jack Nicholson, both 7th grade band students, along with 8 other Scranton Middle School instrumental students, auditioned in October of 2021 for the Michigan School Band and Orchestra Association All-State Middle School Honors Band. That is a mouthful. Over 1,900 band and orchestra students from the state of Michigan auditioned to be selected as members of 5 different performance ensembles. Gabe and Jack were both accepted into the Middle School All-State Honors Band. Selected students of these groups are considered to be the best of the best in the state of Michigan. Their performance was part of the Michigan Music Conference held in Grand Rapids, Michigan, which I attended as well. The boys and their families were in Grand Rapids from January 27th through 29th. The boys participated in lengthy band rehearsals on Thursday and Friday. They were able to visit the conference exhibit hall and then had some time to relax and enjoy the Grand Rapids locations. Their performance on Saturday morning at 8 in the morning at the DeVos Performance Hall was outstanding. I am so proud of both of these boys and thankful to their families for supporting them. These 2 boys are definitely shining stars, and their experiences will positively enhance and advance our instrumental program, as well as shape them as future musicians. Congratulations, Gabe and Jack.
So that was great. Thank you. And congratulations as well. Congratulations to all of our musicians, high school, middle school, solo ensemble. They've been busy doing great things as they always do. So thank you to Ms. Evans, all the directors, and to all the parents supporting it. Keep it going. So great job. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I just had a couple other quick announcements. I just wanted to give a heads up that we will have Kindness Week across the district beginning on February 21st. And this is something that's been done at the high school for a number of years. It will be across the district. Number of activities focusing on the concept of kindness. It will culminate with a basketball game from our Project Unified students that will be playing against Heartland at 1:30 on Friday the 25th. And it's a great way to show support for that great program. Also wanted to let you know that our kindergarten roundup, it's that time of year again where we're recruiting for next year. And we'll have kindergarten roundup at Hawkins and Spencer tomorrow night. And we will have kindergarten roundup for Hilton and Horning a week from now on February 22nd. So pretty excited about that. It's a really exciting year. And I know my kids are older now, but kindergarten roundups, that's a big deal for parents at that age. So welcome to the Brighton area schools. The winter is going so well. Kids are involved in so many activities, from band and orchestra, choir, clubs, sports activities. It's been fantastic all year to just see our students engaged and flourishing. As we're looking at sports in particular, we're getting to the time of year where we're coming to the end of seasons. So we've started some of the end of year games. The wrestling team last week had a chance to attend that. They did extremely well, winning the district championship in wrestling. There's also a number of senior honors nights. I think Friday night is hockey. We just had, I think it was swimming the other night. They had senior night. So congratulations to all those seniors that have put in all of these hours and whatnot. But it's been fun. And just want to say congratulations to everybody that's been so engaged throughout the winter. The last one is one of these ways of engagement is, as you know, Brighton has a fantastic drama program. And this weekend will be The Wizard of Oz, will be Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of this week. And then a week later on the 25th, 26th, and 27th. The students have worked really hard. The staff has worked extremely hard. Had a chance to take a peek at the set and see some of the inside. I'm extremely excited about it. So if you have a chance to get out and see the performance and see our students in action, you'll be very pleased. So good luck, break a leg, and just really enjoy it. Make the most of that time. So those are my updates for you all. Is there any questions or anything for me? The 22nd. Yep. Tuesday and Tuesday. Yep. All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, that moves us to the for action portion of our agenda. Item A, the regular meeting minutes of January 10, 2022. Do we have a motion? Moved by Mr. Stahl. Support by Ms. Mitchell. Any discussion?
I have one item on page 5 for the item 5 roll call. I was listed in attendance and I was not at that meeting. I think that's the only spot where my absence was not noted.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Anything further? All right. With that correction, all those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 7-0.
Wait.
I'm sorry, 6-0 and 1 abstention. My apologies. That moves us to item B, the special meeting minutes of January 19, 2022. Do we have a motion? Moved by Dr. Krebs.
Support.
Supported by Ms. Reed. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 6-0-1. And that moves us to item C, the special meeting minutes of January 24, 2022. Do we have a motion? Moved by Ms. Mitchell, supported by Dr. Krebs. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 7-0. The next item, D, the MASB Board of Directors Election 2022. So there are 3 candidates, as indicated in the packet, of nominees who are seeking to be elected to a 3-year term to serve as the Region 7 representative on the MASB Board of Directors. We are in Region 7. So there was all of the region's nominees were in the packet, but our only focus is on our region, which is Region 7. There are 3 nominees. Guillermo Lopez, who's the incumbent from the Lansing School District, Susan Marlin Zeilser from Monroe Public Schools, and Michael McVeigh from Saline Area Schools. So we will need a motion to vote for one of those 3 candidates on behalf of Brighton Area Schools.
Motion to elect Guillermo Lopez.
All right, so we have a motion by Mr. Stahl to cast a vote on behalf of the district for Mr. Lopez. Supported by Mr. Trombley. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 7-0. All right, that moves us to item E, the addition of police liaison. you want to just briefly address this, Dr. Otwell?
Sure. We discussed this at the work session, and this would be an addition of a second police liaison for the district through the Livingston County Sheriff's Department. The cost is $84,513. And this would leave us in a spot where we would have Officer Bell is our police liaison that would be at the high school level. We have Officer Mitchell as a retired officer that is currently stationed at Scranton. And then we would have a third person. We would have a third individual, as we discussed, for the district. So our three buildings would each have an officer there, and then they would liaison to our elementary buildings. So this is part of our security recommendations to improve security around our district. And I know we discussed this at the board work session as well.
Okay, great. Do we have a motion? So moved. Support by Ms. Reed. Support by Mr. Conley. Any discussion? Mr.
So
Conley. Or
the Maltby Horning,
So we have not decided on the final spot whether this individual would be at Scranton or at Maltby. We've had some conversations. I'd like to get the team together with Officer Bell and Officer Mitchell and this new person to determine kind of the best locations. And I'd like to be able to get all of their feedback as part of that. But those three buildings would be the spots that we would house those three individuals.
and then out of the three, is there one of them that would be the, I guess, like the lead or the supervisor or someone that would coordinate the three, or is that someone over and above?
So this would be a team. This would be a team approach. Officer Bell is our lead, but works for the city. And obviously Brighton High School is in the city, and the bridge, they're in the city. So that's where the jurisdiction is in that area. The Sheriff's Department has a broader jurisdiction. And so as far as the lead, it would probably be myself in the Board of Education would be officially the lead for that. But they would collaborate as a team. They would be, they would all be equals in that.
You would know as well as I do is if there's a decision that needs to be made.
Right.
It's not going to wait till the board comes around to make that decision. That's
Yeah.
more what I'm looking for.
Absolutely. So I would be the direct contact. So
So
from
it
the,
would be
from the
Officer Bell
administration.
would be the senior person that
So,
would
yeah.
oversee that then? Or oversee the group or as the leader of the,
I would say
group
that
or
they
as a
would be
team?
equal partners within, I think they would work as a team. And if there's, when we're talking about something for the school district, for example, and they would say, what direction we want to go, if there was a disagreement on direction,
right.
we would probably be a tiebreaker. If it's something, we would probably make the ultimate decision about maybe what's best, as long as it fits within the options. We wouldn't break any protocols or anything like that. But I think we would see a lot of collaboration.
So there wouldn't necessarily be a captain or a leader of the team.
No.
Okay, got it.
Mr. Ingleter, we talked about finances and where we're at on dollars and like in this particular position, how do we fund this position and how is it sustainable and what's the program?
Yeah, really with the operational increase in the foundation allowance this year, I don't think that I don't see any problem funding that moving forward.
Okay.
We have additional funds coming in this year. We haven't allocated those funds anywhere at this point. This is an investment in the safety and security of the students. So that's
But next year, we'll have the money to pay for it again?
right.
Okay,
So
because that's the key. I mean, obviously you want to be
those
able to.
dollars were actually added to the foundation allowance, so they weren't one-time dollars. They're actually ongoing expenditures of the state. Nothing ever guarantees anything, but those were rolled in and made part of it. And next year's revenues are already looking good at the state level. So in the near-term future, I don't see any issue whatsoever funding these.
Okay, and then in that, do we, right now, for our shared service program, we have a net income. Are we using that net income right now to pay our general fund expenditures like these ones? Or is that still?
I mean, I think most of what that's used for is typically one-time things, but I think there are some ongoing programs that have moved into that space.
Okay.
But you still have some excess that that aren't a problem if you needed it to bear these costs. But like I said, with the increase in operational funds that are coming in at this point, I'm not seeing that as being an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Does the county share in any of the funding of that position?
For the liaison, they are matching the cost of that, from with the city. So any additional, they're picking up that. I think the cost is a little higher. So yeah, they're assisting us a little bit in that regard. And but in general, we're paying for what we're getting. This officer, when school is out, would work for the sheriff's department. So we're paying for the portion that would be during the school days.
All right. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? That passes 7-0. That moves us to item F, the addition of a Maltby counselor. Dr. Outlaw.
So before I do that, I just want to give a shout out. Officer Bell is a wonderful police liaison and has been doing such an amazing job. So while she's not going to be the captain, she's got Chief Bell. Chief Bell is obviously, you always yield to people who have that expertise and knowledge and but the team would be relying heavily on her experience and her skill with the students. So I just want to recognize that as well and thank you, Chief Bell. Appreciate it. So yeah, absolutely. Oh, I love it. So multi-counselor. So tonight we have two mental health recommendations. These are ones we discussed at the work session. Two areas. Obviously, there are two sides to this. One is on the mental health side. Coming out of the pandemic, the mental health needs of young people and pretty much everybody are increased across the entire nation. I think it's well documented. But on the safety side of things, on the security side of things, the work that mental health professionals do is also an incredibly important part of keeping your schools safe. By helping students early, by being there to intervene. It's all the proactive side of things in order to help a student that's in distress. So we are recommending tonight two new positions on the mental health side. And the first one being at Maltby. Currently, we have one counselor for 800 students at Maltby, and we are recommending to add a second so that we're able to better serve the students at Maltby Middle School. And I can talk about the second one when we get to that one. But that's what we're recommending, a second counselor.
All right, we have a motion. So moved. Mr. Stahl. Support by Ms. Reed. Any discussion?
I just have a question. At the last meeting, we talked about the need to provide coverage at the elementary level as well. I know that the importance is most keenly felt at Maltby and at Scranton and at the high school. But I do think it's important that we are covering our elementary schools in our long-term plan. Is there any thought that this position or the Scranton position would create some availability to provide services at the elementary level, or are we still looking to cover that some other way?
So the need for these two positions that we're talking about tonight, we have a wish list of things, obviously, that we would love. So, but we tried to pick positions that we thought would give us the greatest return on the investment. We saw the biggest needs in the two that we talked about tonight. At the elementaries, we do have counselors and we do have mental health staff there, but they're shared between buildings. So in the future, it may be a conversation for the board to perhaps have one at each building. I know that that's on our wish list that I provided at that board meeting. But these are the two, when we're talking about being prudent with dollars and investing in the spot where we get the biggest return, we thought that these two spots, when I say we, that's administration, but we also talked with our mental health professionals to get feedback, and we got feedback from different individuals that these were the spots where we thought were the biggest. But the elementary is definitely covered. We do have counselors at those buildings, but it may be something down the road that we wish to go to one full-time per building versus splitting between buildings.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Are these again, paid for out of foundation, or are these special dollars?
Well, we do have one of them, it's covered on a grant stuff that's coming in right now. It's
How long is the grant good for?
good for 3 years, and then we will be picking it up after that.
Is that 100% for 3 years?
No, it's a tail off, so there's a 3-year phase.
And that's for one of them. Then the other one would be foundation.
Yep. General fund. Yep.
And then, is it true, and Chad, maybe you know this, did we lose 2 more male teachers over at Malpe, or 2 more male teachers in the district just
No.
recently?
Resignations.
We have resignations from the bridge.
From the bridge?
Yes, sir.
Male teachers?
Yes.
What is our ratio of male teachers to female teachers? Do you know?
So I can't give you the exact number, but it's about 3/4 of our staff are women, of our teaching staff.
And
And
are
obviously
these
that's
positions
heavier
already
elementary versus secondary.
pre-filled, or are you going to go out and look for?
Yeah, we're in the process of replacing these positions as we speak. Yes, hope to have a recommendations for hire.
Have any males applied for 'em?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Counseling position, and obviously they're all intertwined in a way because they all communicate with each other. What's the performance requirement? Who's paying attention to their success and failure rate? Who's addressing the students that needed help, got help, and were successful because they got help? What management's in place to oversee this division of Brighton area schools? Who watches them?
Sure. So they're members of the teaching staff. So they are evaluated per law. And that would be their building administrator would be their supervisor. And it would be one of, at Malpe, it would be either Mr. Brenner or Mr. Ayton would be their direct individual that would be involved with that. There's a whole process that they have to go through. There is a specific evaluation model for counselors that, they have to be rated on, and that's all of our counselors. So that's who would do it.
So then technically they'd be tenured like a teacher? The counseling department is a tenured position?
If I'm correct, counselors are a little bit different, but is it 5 years? Mr. Scanlon, do you know that offhand?
Yes.
Is it still 5 years?
4 or 5,
4.
depending. And if they have a teaching certificate as well, that would
Right, I'm
determine
the
their
teaching
tenure,
side,
because you
so-
could hire a school counselor without a teaching certificate or with a teaching certificate.
Yeah.
So they may be tenured or not.
Correct.
Right.
So
depending on if they're-
are our plans this is kind of getting to my point. I'm glad we brought up the teaching certificate. What are we planning on hiring? Are we going to hire counselors that can teach and be in a classroom environment as well? And there's different classes that can be taught by counselors that have teaching certificates. And I mean, I'm thinking, not necessarily the exact model, but the reaching higher, the different things that have been taught in our schools by volunteers.
Right.
Okay, that we could, just like we've done with our coaches for our programs where we've hired coaches to come in, where we pay them a stipend to teach or to coach the students, and it maintains itself year after year. So in a vision, I would like to see some kind of idea that would have them interacting, not just helping out the student in distress, but being involved in the population.
Sure.
And that
Yeah.
involvement, I think, is the key to big success. And the big, because these teachers are interacting with students on a daily basis, not just with ones in crisis, but with ones that are being moved up, and then it helps the others move up. So just an idea.
It's a high demand position. So we're casting a wider net. We're going to hire the best person.
Right.
And the person who's going to connect with students, that's going to have the energy that we need, that's going to fit with the standards of the Brighton area schools. That person might have a teaching credential or not. But whoever that individual is, a big piece of being successful in these roles is not just being reactive, but it's about being proactive.
Correct.
And the proactive side is something that effective counselors do, the effective mental health professionals do. It's groups, it's being in the lunchroom, connecting and making those initial connections with students. So those are things that we would expect from these new hires.
But again, that's where I'm going. And I have no problem funding it, and if it helps the students, but I'd like to
Right.
see these folks truly
Yeah.
engaged with students and not behind closed doors where they're not accessible.
And as I said last time, We picked these two spots because we need people to be direct contact with students. We don't need people in meetings with a bunch of adults, filling out paperwork, and things like that. We want people that are going to be available to do exactly what we all want, which is you working with kids, connecting with kids, doing groups, being in classrooms, whatever it takes to help our students to be successful. That's what we want. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? I just have one follow-up question.
Yeah.
Talking about the finances, I realize that there's a grant Mr. Engleton referred to that will cover with decreasing amounts one of the positions. But I thought I read that part of the federal dollars could be earmarked towards mental health supports. Has that been, I mean, have we looked at that, or where are we with respect to the allocation of our federal dollars? And could some of that money be used either for one or more of these positions, or perhaps looking at, the elementary level that Ms. Reed raised?
Certainly, some of that can be used towards that, and it'll depend on what exactly their caseloads look like, on whether we can allocate a certain portion of that money over towards that. But again, those dollars are one-time dollars, so
No, I understand.
they're not going to roll into the future. So the plan would be to take those and pay for them out of our foundation, just so that we're sure that we're having them and sustaining those positions. So I think once you introduce it, it's going to be very hard to take those back out. People are going to come to line with those positions. So it's important. Trust me, I'll do everything I can.
I know you will.
Over that way, make sure we use up that money, but. And there's going to be a lot of that kind of stuff that happens, but it's best that we look at it from a fully sustainable fund.
I understand that. I just really was focusing more on a short-term, bridge to.
I would say it comes out of the pie, but the pie is going to be bigger for the next 3 years. 2 years. For the next 2 years, our pie is going to be bigger to cut it out of.
Right.
That's how I would describe it.
Okay. All right, so all those in favor of the pending motion with regard to the Mulby counselor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 7-0. That takes us to item G, the addition of Scranton mental health professional.
Sure.
Touch on that a little bit, Dr. Halla?
Yeah, absolutely. Same priority here. This is this very important position. Middle school is, as we all know, middle school is a really important time for our young people. And there's a position that mirrors what the vision for this position is. It's Chris Nelson's role at the high school. And it's exactly what we were just talking about, that she's out with students. She's proactive. She's there to help a student in distress, very visible, all those type of things. We need one at Scranton, and that's what we're asking for here.
Okay, do we have a motion? So moved by Mr. Stahl, supported by Dr. Krebs. Any discussion?
How do you see this position differing from the one at Maltby, since one is a counselor and the other one is a mental health professional?
Sure. So this is what I would say. There are two. So we would have two counselors at Maltby. So what this will do is, between the two of them, they'll both be able to cover. I don't know exactly how we're going to allocate the people, but there are some things that are administrative that are associated with being a counselor. So I'm not sure when we get together and meet, we might have one counselor might be 5th grade and the other might be 6th grade, and they might loop with that grade, and then they do both the support and other. Or maybe one of them wants to do more of the administrative and the other wants to do some more of the other. We can divide it between the two, but we're creating it in a way where it could be split between those individuals. So more of a team approach.
How is that different than, or is there something different that you're planning for Scranton?
So Scranton already has a structure in place. They have enough counseling in place to do the administrative and the scheduling and all of the things that our counselors do. This, with the students being a little bit older, this is a little bit different. This person we would like to have set aside to be specifically for this reason. This would be more social work, potential counseling. It's because of the age of the students. I think that the level of intervention might be greater. But that's why we're designing it this way.
Thank you.
I had a question for you. So it's Grant, the person that is our social worker there, or counselor, that person also runs classes, like it's who you call if you want to get in a class. Is that correct?
Yeah, the counseling department.
Is that part of that job, or is that just something that they've been doing?
A school counselor does all kinds of things. At the high school, they do college applications. That's a big piece of it, but scheduling, and that's an ongoing thing throughout the year. They do a lot of academic counseling where a student's struggling and they might need to change or get intervention. So they do a lot of academic. The vision for this 7th grade, 8th grade person is not that they're not going to be an academic counselor. They're going to be a wellness counselor. That's the vision of this one. The multi one will be maybe a little bit of both. That's kind of that's why we're designing them a little bit differently.
I think at Scranton Middle School, and again, I remember going to Scranton Middle School. And I mean, I remember what we were doing. I remember what was going on. I remember recently when my son was there, not that long ago. And currently, I understand what's going on. So I think this is going to be another one, like I asked, who is going to be the oversight position? Because this particular one could be very influential in making a better place for these kids when it comes to, I'm just going to use, for instance, in the old days, we used to do DARE programs and bring the police officer in and talk about drug awareness. And it went on for years. The success of it was always, where does it show up at? Can we prove that it worked? Can we prove that it took the kids and steered them away from drugs? And I used to bring the race cars over, and we had, a couple of Livingston County sheriffs that did it. We had a couple of our state police officers did over the years, and I'd show up at different things and just see what they were up to. And it was a point that they just were trying to, whatever time it mattered, hopefully they made a connection. In this position at Scranton, they're a critical needs operation because it's timing. When I brought it up, I think before, my feelings on rehabilitation versus not ever starting in the first place. We're way further off to never start in the first place and go down the roads. Sometimes you deal with generational situations, be it a brother or a sister or family, and different conditions that create a more of a problem potential for that young person that just depending what, let's just say one day they got upset and decided to go hang out with the wrong crowd. Well, that can happen at any time. The key is giving them the skills to deal with it and know not to do that. So this position, I'd like to see related to management in the schools in our level of administration here. It's that important that we would somehow develop plans and know the success ratio and know the things that we can change and modify. Because this is a moving target. This target has moved and evolved from the date of, we had dial phones to touch tone to cell phones, these high powered machines that can create and wreak havoc on these kids. And it does for adults too, let's face it, social media and all these things. So these things is a moving target. So that's all I would say about that position. I'm obviously in support of it, but I'm also in support of guidance, changing with what needs to be changed on behalf of students, back to being engaged with the students, teaching classes that will promote good health, and possibly working with the middle school earlier at Maltby and getting it caught in 5th and 6th grade. And because again, we know what's going on, and we know in the 7th and 8th grade, we're dealing with certain things, and we know what we don't know. Well, we don't know what we don't know, to be honest. How's that? Sure. And I think this could be very important. So if is this a new position for us? Yes. Yeah. So this could be very beneficial, but I would just share with everybody on the board, but also what I've seen law enforcement over the years, we should learn from what they've already done and figure out what they felt worked and how we would bring parts of that back, and then look at what we think we need to do to be current. Because like I said, as the funding for those projects fell away, the need never fell away. Not one time. It's all the needs there, it's consistent, and it changed. And the other thing is, it's a renewing population, which sometimes we think, well, what does that mean to us as adults? It's not renewing to us because we're kind of stable in what we're doing. That population continues to change. Every year it's a new person that has a whole new look at the thing. It's totally new to them. So how do we get to that person to let them know it's, I wrote down, it's cool to be, kind of not do that stuff. It's cool to find things that you like to do and enjoy, be it drama, be it the orchestra band, be it the, running around with the kids and play kickball, whatever it is. That's way better than going down the wrong roads. And I think this counselor / mental health professional could promote that at a high degree and get these kids engaged. And the ones that are at risk, we need to get them earlier. So, and they're communicating. So thank you.
All right, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? That passes 7-0. That moves us to item H, Human Resources Report. Mr. Scale?
Yes, good evening. The Human Resource Report is presented for your review and approval. We have 2 resignations this evening, which we are actively in the process of fulfilling those open positions at this time. We also have a recommendation for hire for Catherine White to replace one of our counselors who resigned from Scranton in January. Catherine comes to us with 4 years of counseling experience at both the high school and middle school level. We recommend you approve the Human Resource Report as presented.
All right, we have a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Reed, supported by Dr. Krebs. Any discussion? All right, Mr. Conlon.
One question on the resignations. Now they're effective. I see they're gone.
Mhm.
So did we have notice on those resignations or no notice?
We got the 2 weeks notice.
You got 2 weeks on both
Yes.
of them?
Yes.
All right. And then how are we filling those spots now while we're waiting to?
One of them, the special education one is being covered.
Okay.
Michelle Allison's covering that. And then the social studies one, we have a sub in place.
Subs in there?
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You bet.
Okay, all those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 7-0. Takes us to item I, School of Choice. Dr. Alba.
Sure. So this is the time of year where the board approves or gives feedback on our School of Choice program for the fall. This will be for the fall of 22-23. Last year, I guess the first thing I would say is obviously our School of Choice program has been important for the district. We have a little over 1,000 students in our district that are not resident students that attend. It's about 17% of our population. And, they have a strong impact, being here in our buildings. And we have a lot of great students that have joined students that are resident students as well. What we did last year, we made a tweak. Up until last year, we had done unlimited choice for every single grade. And as many students came in, the district would take. But what we found last year is that our elementary buildings are almost at capacity. So what we did last year is we shifted our elementary certain grades there to being limited choice. All it did was it narrowed the time, the window for people to sign up, and then allowed us to make sure that we didn't overfill any of our buildings. So that gave us flexibility. So we are recommending again to do that same program, to do unlimited for junior kindergarten, and 5th through 11th grade, unlimited, okay? So that would be open from tomorrow through, is it tomorrow? Is that when you guys would open? Tomorrow through the beginning of August. And then the limited, we would open, and we were going to do it after spring break, because you can do it open for 30 days. That would give us time to advertise, make sure people are prepared. And we would do limited choice for 1st through 4th grade and 12th grade. So they would be open, but during that window of time, which allows us to do placement. We don't have a lot of space in our buildings. For example, Horning is over capacity based on, some of those charts. So what questions do you have?
Well, we'll get a motion first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, we have a motion. So we're, Mr. Stahl, let's go to Mr. Conley. Okay, any discussion or questions?
So I guess,
Fill it up.
okay, I was gonna so when you accept them for grades 1 through 4, you would also accept them by building, you would assign a building when the acceptance is, it's not open to all.
Yeah, where space, where we have that
So
space
if
is
you have,
what,
say, 5 spaces at 2nd grade, it would be the 5 spaces wherever. you
correct,
have available, it could be 2 at Hawkins, 2 at.
correct,
in one sense.
exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's worked out. I think we should continue, and I think that we continue to offer more and more programs because we have the number of students looking at Brighton area schools. And we are, I think you can tell me, but I am sure we're the school of choice for the county. Is that correct? We have the highest number of school of choice students.
I don't know. I'm not sure. I know that there's, I'm not sure what the other school districts have, but we're definitely a destination district.
Right. I think we are. So I'd put that up to Ms. Mosier if she could check on that, please, and let me know where we're at in relation by percentage for school of choice. I think we're 900 or 1,000.
From every district, I could tell you this, from every district in the county, in the area, we receive many more students than go out.
Right.
So
Do we have 1,000 right now, school of choice students?
1,019 is what we
Pretty
have.
close for a good guess there. Yeah, and that's great. And that's continuing to inch up just a little. And, but like I said, I believe it's really opened the door here for us to offer more and more programs for our students. So, thank you.
How many JK classrooms do we have?
Currently, we have 5. We have 2 at Spencer and 1 at our other 3 elementary schools.
Did they just start, they used to be just at morning, right? Or?
I think they've been at multiple.
We usually have 5 or 6 sections.
Yeah. Yeah. In the last 6 years, just off the top of my head, just from you had about 120 or so junior kindergarten. 2 years ago, we had 90. We had 88. No, we had 88 2 years ago. We had 90, I think, this year. So those are kind of our numbers. So that's what we're projecting, 90 again next year. And again, that could ebb or flow, but we're looking at probably 5 classes again next year. Unless the enrollment increases, then we'd add a 6th.
But that's possible to do if we get the enrollment.
Yep.
And again, when it was run at Miller, I mean, it was obviously a very successful program when our kindergarten was just at Miller. It was,
We have some great teachers in
it was
there.
a standout, really.
It's a neat program. My daughter went through it, and wonderful
My
teachers.
son too. Yeah.
For that age group that has those has the early or late birthday, however you want to call it, the fall birthdays. It's a good program.
I know that we did some population studies in preparation for the bond. What are we seeing as far as trends go for folks moving in district with families, turnover from, folks leaving after their kids have graduated and new families moving in?
Sure. So we have a trend. I don't know if it was last year, sometime, I think last year was my first year in the district. So the years seems like a couple years already, but last year we in one of our work sessions, we talked about it, and I had done a study kind of where our resident versus non-resident enrollment, and our resident enrollment is decreasing. The reason why is just because the people that are staying in Brighton, people have children that are 25 and 30 years old, and they still want to live in Brighton. So we're seeing a decline in resident enrollment, but it's being filled by interest from non-resident. So if we continue on the same trends that we're on right now, the proportion of our non-resident students is going to increase over the next 5 years at least. I think I did a 5-year study. So, but that's the trend.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Great question.
Alicia, I sold a house to a family just so you can close on Wednesday. 3 kids. One of the babies is 8 weeks old. I picked up the thing and look, Brighton schools. So there's 3.
Keep them coming.
They keep them coming. That's right. That just happened. So
There's a lot of new development around.
there's a lot of things happening. Yeah, and this new family, they're so excited to be in Brighton schools, you wouldn't believe it.
That's great.
That was just fun to work with them.
But that's the main thing that I want to make sure that we keep an eye on as a board, because School of Choice has been a wonderful program for us. And I'm
Yes.
so glad that we can offer that to folks that want to be here.
Yeah.
But I think it's important that we make sure that we're not overburdening our schools and making it less attractive to resident students, because we always want to
Well.
make sure we've got space for them.
I think it's working the other way for us. Honestly, if you looked at it, the increase in, School of Choice, keeping these programs alive and healthy and having those extra kids has been beneficial not only for the kids that want to come to our school, but for our kids that are in the school. Would you support that, Dr. Outlaw?
Yeah, I think that once people sign up, they're all the same.
Right.
They're Brighton students, whatever their address
Part of the
is, that's what I
community.
would say.
Yeah, but it helps, it's good for all of them, so.
Absolutely.
It is good to, there are districts that have such a high proportion of school of choice students that they lose their connection with their community. And I think you always want to be cautious of that. This is the Brighton area schools, and we welcome people to be part of the Brighton experience. So you always want to keep an eye on that.
Have you seen that by experience, where you've seen it go too far over?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's school districts that have 30, 40, there's some districts that have 70% school of choice. And I think they lose the connection with the community that they serve. So, but we're
The
right.
bonds fail.
Now, the 17%, 17% is I think is a decent number. But I think when you push up too high, it can be problematic.
Okay, thank you.
That's my opinion.
You're the expert on that.
Well, I think the fact that we're now moving towards a incremental implementation of a limited, looking at, I think that's indicative of the fact that we have a solid foundation within our districts, and we have to then use the limited school of choice as sort of a targeted, to keep sort of that number at the sweet spot of, what's been proven to be successful for the number of students in our district and what will support the program. So, hopefully that will continue, that we'll be able to have, the influx of young families in Brighton that will, we'll keep our numbers up, and then we can then strategically utilize the limited choice as a way to, to maintain that control. I think that's the key, is just maintaining that appropriate balance. So, all right. Okay. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 7-0. Moves us to item J, the 2019 bond program, loose equipment scheme. Mr.
I
Engleter?
have a point of order before we start this. I have a comment on the bond points that we're bringing forward. It was my understanding that when we went to when we started talking about the bond, that we were going to have more of these discussions at bringing these to, for future action before we went, for future action before we went to immediately for action. I guess that was my understanding, that was going to be our procedure, but it seems to me that we are now regularly just moving things directly to for action. And my question is this going to be our procedure moving forward? If so, why is that? Why did that happen? And why did we change from moving it to for future? I understand that occasionally we may have things that need immediate approval, but it seems to be that it's everything, and that seems to be not the best way for us to be doing this. I would like the opportunity to review the material twice before we go on them.
Yeah. And
I would agree with you. We do need to do a better job getting it to you. One thing that does kind of hinder it is the fact that we are now doing basically one meeting a month. Some of this just came in and transpired in between a couple meetings. If you recall the last one, I'm not making an excuse for it, but I'm just telling you what happened. The last time we actually had it that way was on 2 meetings, maybe 3 meetings ago. When we approved phase, I believe it was 3, and it came to us as for future, and then we got it to vote for the next time.
But my understanding was we can bring it forward to a workshop. We can discuss it for future action at a workshop. We can vote on it at a workshop.
Yeah.
But that was, I thought, one of the reasons for keeping the workshops, to have that opportunity to discuss these.
That's true. It's absolutely true. We'll make sure we get to this.
Correct, because when the bond committee has the ability to approve and bring it, to approve it at the bond committee and bring it here for action.
Yeah,
Well,
well-
before we get too far afield, let's Mr. Engleter, why don't you go through what is included in this? We'll have a motion, and then we'll have discussion.
All right. Yeah, so as far as the loose equipment STEAM, this is a set of equipment that's going into the CNC lab in the new STEAM Center edition. This was equipment that's been planned out for a while, and a whole committee has been working on what is the proper models and things to put in there. I know they've laid out the entire lab, and so I put this equipment out to bid. We did receive bids in on January 31st, and we did run these by the bond facilities committee to bring them here for action. And that's where we're at right now.
All right, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Trombley, support by Mr. Conley. All right, any discussion?
I just wanted to ask a question. There's a dyno on here, but you said that didn't go in this one, is that correct? Or
That's correct. So on the bid opening included a dyno, a chassis dyno, that the LESA has given us added cost dollars to purchase. The committee itself wasn't comfortable with some of the safety aspects with it. We're going to take that back, discuss it. I've already discussed it with Mr. Darga. He feels pretty comfortable on the safety. I said, that's fine, but we need to repackage it, re-talk about it. Well, if it reaches the level where I feel it needs to come back, we'll bring that back at a later date.
Mr. Conley?
I've ruled out personally that chassis dyno idea. It's not, we don't have, it didn't come out of our funding. That was part of the contention. Well, we're going to get it funded from another funding source. It didn't come out of bond dollars or anything else. But what I've asked them to do is go back and look at if those dollars can be reallocated to another thing that would be beneficial in that program. We've had a time now, 3 years running, that we've had a lack of using what we currently have as far as technology for the students. That's just how it is. Adding this amount of technology on top of what we already have that we haven't been using is a bad idea. Until it's used at its full potential, what's in that building, what we've already agreed to, and all of us agreed to it back when, we agreed to run the operation like it's running. Very fortunate opportunity for students as long as they're getting the access to what's there. At this time, we need to work on that. And this particular machine, I believe, will distract it from what they should be doing, from the core academics that need to take place before you get to this level. And, but there is a method in use that if this money is available in other areas in that same facility, that could be used for all students, not just a couple students. This is one of those items that would be advanced only kind of thing, which right now we have in our advanced class. You can probably count them on a couple hands.
Yep. But the dyno is not what we're here to discuss
Not at
tonight.
all.
It was
This was
just,
on the list though, and it's on here, and that's why I'm discussing it. This
yeah,
shouldn't
it
be
was part of the bid opening because I bid it out at the same time.
understood, but it's not part of what we're agreeing to tonight. So
Correct.
this, okay, that's as long as we all understand. I don't support it.
Dr. Kress?
I just have a couple of questions about this. So, what kind of maintenance plan moving forward do we have for this equipment?
Right, so I did, after you called me this afternoon, I did check in with Mr. Darga on this equipment here. He's indicating that this equipment has been around for 100 years. It's not anything that requires a whole lot of additional maintenance type items. There's some greasing that needs to be done and stuff like that, but he felt the life cycle on one of these is probably 40 to 50 years. And he really felt that the maintenance situation was extremely minimal on these pieces of equipment here.
Okay, thank you.
If I might on that, there's zero maintenance. These machines are made to run 24/7 in industry. The students will never wear them out, ever. The only time that they're going to wear them out is when they have a mistake, and they'll create, and you have to repair them. And that's the key also, and that's more what I would look towards. So your point is very well taken and correct. So in a repair and maintenance category, they'll need repair and maintenance from not knowing how to use the machine, because it's called crashing them. Okay, just like a car. You're learning how to drive a car, you have X number of percentage of incidents with young people learning to drive a car. The same thing is there's a risk factor to teaching, and especially at this stuff. So that would be something that we need to account for. There should be a small, money put aside to do those repairs and maintenance, but it won't be from wearing them out. That's just, like you said, the little maintenance, basic routine maintenance on them, similar to we do an annual inspection on the hoist. They come in and check the hoist in the repair garage. These hoists look like brand new. They're checked just for precautions to make sure something didn't fail, but they aren't even close to the cycles that they're made to go up and down, 40 times a day. These hoists go up and down 40 times a season, technically. in comparison. These machines are the same way, very high quality. And there'll be machines that the students will see in industry, which Dr. Darga has been really good at going on tours, going on machine shows, and bringing back very valid current data along with the kind of groups that we met up with at different times. I've met with him a couple different times with the groups that he's been dealing with. I think we can be very confident with his, I think now 30 plus years in this industry, or 40, I think it's a lot. I don't want to say, but he's been around it quite a bit. He's done a nice job for us. Fortunate to have him on board to help us.
Can I get a question?
Shoot, I may not have an answer.
Can you tell me, now I know what a lathe is in the woodworking world, but
Yeah.
how is it used in this way, an email and an forever?
They're all part of the machine shop environment in the CNC lab. They called it, you guys for a while when I wasn't here, called it a dirty lab. This is not a dirty lab. This is a very sophisticated precision measurement kind of equipment that can be seen. Some is manually controlled. You can override it manually, which is important. And the other is all CNC controlled. So it's all part of that CNC lab.
So what's a knee all do?
I can't tell you other than it's similar to a Bridgeport like we have. And they picked it out because of the versatility of it. So that machine, I'm going to learn something too.
So,
And that was,
so
Go
the
ahead.
knee mill apparently is called a knee mill because it actually actuates up vertically, and the lowest point it goes is basically at your knee.
well,
So that's why they call it a knee mill.
so if the world was built on a milling machine like a Bridgeport, and the tables, you can move them up, down, back, and there's 1, 2, 3 axis kind of things that go on and forth. So in this, I was in the meeting when they were talking about it, and it's just another name for a milling machine, but like you said, that goes to that level. But again, the height of the machine, when you can raise from the table to we'll call it the machine surface, is the key. It's how big a project you can fit in it. So I backed away from this part of it. Otherwise, I'd be more knowledgeable because I felt that Dr. Darga was spot on. And I listened to what he was doing. And I said, and we had the night I was at the high school, we had 2 people from Lansing Community College, both one of their head instructors and another one that actually was coming out of Pinckney schools that used to work with Mr. Darga. And he's now an instructor at Lansing Community College also. So together, I'm like, I just kind of moved back further like this. I said, here's these men know exactly what we need for our students. And for me, I've got Bridgeports at our shop that I currently run and the machines that they'll run at our school. I look forward to, seeing exactly kind of the direction we have for students. But there's a basis of manual machines, which will be, without having to use computers. And then on the other side, there'll be programming. And technically, they'll be able to program, download it, and make a part. Just like we do with 3D printers and plastic, they'll be able to do it in metal. And to finished product too, as well, which is pretty darn exciting at the high school level. And then as they go off into college or go to industry, they'll have a big jump. And we're working on, and Bill and I, in fact, Dr. Krebs was there too, where he talked about certificate programs. Yeah, that's right, you were there too. Yes, thank you. So, but that's important. And what can we do? When I left Brighton High at 17, I was a certified technician when I left. We took the exams in the auditorium. In fact, I was a master certified technician, so I thought that was pretty cool. So, but I still realized I thought I knew everything, but I didn't know anything. So the theory is, though, when you get started, as we do this for these students, I believe it's a big feather in their cap when they can leave with that. And the same thing with our health ops as we get to that, is to have these kids be CNA certified, things like that. So this is exciting. So all you do is keep Dr. Darga with us for another, how many years, Dr. Outlaw? How long is he going to stay with us?
Dr. Darga? Yeah. Forever.
That's what I thought. Perfect. That's what I'm thinking. Hey, where did I just, you put
We
a,
gotta take care of him and
yes,
make sure
but
we
what
treat
a
him
great timing though. It couldn't have been better.
Yeah, he's been a great addition to the team,
He has.
being a retiree, and he is,
He's teaching class once in a while, I hear.
he is, but he enjoys this stuff. And then has experience as an administrator, and he's done a lot of CTEs, teacher. It's a great fit. And, he gets very excited about this stuff, about autos. Every time I talk to him, he's talking about a car that he's working on, or,
Yeah, he took his wife on his
something
first
like
date.
that.
Yeah,
So he's
that's right.
perfect for these conversations.
So pretty exciting.
So I know we've got it here in the resolution itself that we're already over budget for technology for the STEAM Center. So how does this additional expense fit in with the contingency dollars? What are we spending this money on that we could be using someplace else? I mean, how does this fit into our overall plan?
Like, I can't answer that second part of that question, but you're right. What was in the bond app itself, there was two segments. One was furniture and steam equipment, and the other was robotics equipment. The total of the two of them was about $750,000 approximately. So, we basically, with the robotics arms and everything we bought before, that was almost $600,000, and that, the amount for robotics equipment was about $158,000 in the bond. So we were already going towards that move. We decided that was good equipment for the students, for the robotics program, for everything in that STEAM edition. So we did approve that moving forward, and then the classroom furniture and the stuff that was along with that has put us over that mark. So this is basically coming out of the contingency because we don't have any more allocated there. So what we may or may not be using that contingency for is still up for debate. The question, I guess, becomes whether or not it's a good use of that money towards this building and program. Does that answer your question?
It does, and I guess I need to be a little bit more specific.
Well, let me try a little bit additional. I mean, it becomes a lot of variables that come into play because obviously the building itself was under budget by a considerable amount. So those dollars that were allocated for the building came in under, and then that fell into that pot of contingency when we had those savings. So it gets a little bit sticky where it's not just, okay, we allocated this much and that's what it is, because certain lines are under and certain lines are over. That's just the way it kind of flows out. But I know you guys wanted to know how that furniture actually, the equipment line actually stacked up. So I wanted to put that in there this time.
How are we then with the overall expenditures for the STEAM center versus the original budget for the building and everything that was going to go inside of it?
We're still well under if you were to take and just look at it in a vacuum, that it's just the STEAM center dollars that are allocated. Because phase 2, I think, is what it was, and that was mostly just the STEAM center, and that itself was like $4 million under budget. So I feel comfortable in telling you that we're fine on that.
Okay. My last question, kind of piggybacking on the idea that Mr. Conley brought up with the dyno, do we feel comfortable that we have a good, solid education plan for this equipment?
That's not I can't answer that for you.
So there are certain programs that we have today that this will benefit, but as we all know, the big conversation is where we're going next. And I know we're going to have some conversations about that. I'm really excited about this, but I think the vision, obviously I wasn't here for this, but the vision of the STEAM Center is it was going to bring something that we didn't already have in the district. It was going to bridge us to that next thing. So I think these are universal tools that could apply in a lot of different ways. And I think that's why they were chosen. It's because they're not, it's not for a program that's 30 years old. It might apply to them, but it could also be used towards something to the future. But the programming, we are working on where we're going with that. And we're going to need high-tech equipment that's versatile. And because the stuff that we're going to be teaching 10 years from now, we haven't even had our first thought about what that is going to be yet. And that's the industry. So we're preparing our students with skills to be able to adapt to all these changes that are constantly happening. So I know it's a long story to it, but we're still working on the programming side of it. But this is equipment that I think could serve in many of the directions that we'll go.
In support, just so you get an idea, Alicia, too, the interlink to what we're putting in place now to what we have running currently, there's a direct connection. They'll be using and operating, and be it Mr. Jordan's engineering class, be it robotics, be it at some point, I'm going to see the sciences and some other things that will evolve too, even with oddly you think equipment, but no, it'll evolve in that too. So be it metallurgy and different things we're heading towards. But the neat thing is today, it'll fill a gap that we didn't have anything to fill with, but also give us the opportunity to build on it. And like we said, and right from the beginning, and I mean, day one, we talked about risk. Okay, there's a risk in taking a chance to point in a direction that you believe you're going to need to get to. In industry, I mean, I do it daily. It's unfortunate some days, like, man, I didn't hit it. But overall, you look at what you have to do and take risk. And this is a very calculated, positive way to take risk and take a shot at it for the betterment. And there'll be changes. You'll be modifying some things, I'm sure, and maybe adding to. But this is a starting point. And I think it fits it 100%. And like I said, I'd still want more. Like I said, I look forward to filling this one up and having to build another one. Actually, then I'll be out there championing a new bond. So wouldn't that be fun? Right? I mean, seriously. And seeing what opportunities open up, because we are in a position in our economies, and let's say Michigan, say our country, we are geared to build people that can compete. We have to. And it's not maybe, it's definite. And so this program is going to be a great launch pad. Looking forward to it for a lot of students.
Thank you.
Any further comments, questions? So I guess from my perspective, first of all, I think that, this type of equipment and kind of going to Dr. Outlaw's point that, trying to envision where this will take us and the opportunities that will be created. I mean, that's certainly consistent with the whole premise on which, as us as a board, when we put the bond out there and we were allocating the steam dollars because we felt like, it was important that this was going to be, we were going to make a significant investment in this space. And we didn't necessarily know what that would ultimately, the details would look like because of obviously changes with industry and, what might be beneficial for the students, moving forward to, not only necessarily enhance what we already have, but create new opportunities. So I think these expenditures are certainly consistent with that objective. I'm very impressed with Darga, and I know from his experience, he's been very successful in overseeing these type of programs, and I place a lot of faith in his research and what he thinks will be very beneficial for our district. The only concern I have, and it goes back, it's kind of a combination of some questions that Ms. Reed raised and Dr. Krebs, is just more of from a process standpoint, because I mean, we, obviously there, we still have to, the greatest pieces of equipment and programs, we certainly would support giving our students every opportunity we can and addressing any other issue financially that we may need in the district, but we don't have an unlimited budget. And so we still have an obligation collectively as a board to, when we're looking, we can't look at things in a vacuum. We can't say, oh, well, it's over budget, but we're recommending approve it anyway because we're going to move forward with this. We may ultimately decide collectively that, yeah, this is so vitally important that we're going to support this, and we're going to continue to extend beyond what was budgeted in the bond, because it does promote that objective and does give our students the opportunities that we want to see them have in this space. But it still comes back to obviously you guys, and I say you guys that are on the bond committee, I mean, you're digesting all of the the information that's being presented, but we still as a board, we're the ones that are still, all of us are still responsible collectively to make that decision. There's no committee has any unilateral authority to make a decision. There can only be recommendations, and we have to look at it in the totality of all the circumstances. So I'm going to support this. I appreciate Mr. Engelter's his feedback that we're still aggregately we're still even under budget with respect to the overall amounts that we budgeted that were in the bond application for the steam facilities and the equipment. I mean, this is clearly something that will be consistent with that objective. But again, I understand your concern, and I appreciate the questions that Ms. Reed asked, because I actually had some of the same questions myself. So anyway, all right.
Yeah,
How much under are we? Get a little closer for these guys. Go ahead, Bill.
That would be helpful.
It's important.
I think it would be helpful
Sure.
for us to just
Yeah.
maybe just get an update. So, because we'll probably be talking about, well, we're planning on talking about this at the next work session.
Good. That'd be fine.
Where we're
Good.
having, and
Yeah.
that would be helpful information as well,
Okay.
for sure, to.
Okay, thank you.
to have.
That's all I was gonna say. I was gonna, 28th.
Yes, right.
but in all honesty, I think you would have to know that the bond committee wouldn't bring you dollars that are over the amount of what we have to spend. We wouldn't spend additional money because where would that money come from? Other than the general fund. So we as a bond committee can't look at any more dollars than are what allocated in the full amount of the bond that are allocated to use for construction and equipment. There's other fees that go along with there with professional fees and those types of things. But again, those are off limits, those fees. So we have to stick within a budget. And that's why we forecast and we continue to watch these dollars and cents. Because from a fiduciary responsibility on our part, we wouldn't bring it if we were over budget.
Well, you are over, I mean, this is over budget.
Not as a total.
It doesn't matter, that's not the point. The point is if there's eating into contingency dollars, that's not a decision that can be unilaterally made by the bond committee.
That's not what I'm saying. That's
what I'm
why we bring it here for approval.
saying. But my point is that we don't have any information. We as a board, all we're getting is this number and it's over. And we're supposed to support, well, that's not a process.
It's over from a category, from a budget or an estimated amount when the application was put together. There is no hard dollar until you get the bids and you receive them after you know what you're looking for. So to say we're over, maybe from the category, we might be over, but as a total, we're not. And that's why I know there's a big to-do about contingency dollars. That's why contingency dollars are there, to take care of these items, and at the end of the day, end up with a successful project that's been funded in full.
Right, but the question is, and you said it yourself, that the question is with the contingency dollars, you have to decide which items are going to be used for those contingency dollars. The question is, who is the one that's making that decision? And my point is, we all have a fiduciary duty as a board collectively to make that decision, not a committee. And so
That's why it's here to
we're
vote
asking
on.
these questions.
We recommend it, we bring it here, and that's why we end up voting. We don't make the decisions at the bond committee in regards to this type of dollar amount. That's why it comes back here.
And that's why we're asking for more information, because we don't have that information. That's what we were just talking about. That was my point, is the process. That's the whole point, is we don't, you guys have a much, obviously, more detailed understanding of what this represents, because you're in the bond committee. The other four of us, we don't. We don't know how much it's over.
So did anybody read the board packet and bother to call?
Yeah, I did. I had an
Okay.
extensive conversation with.
Okay, so you understand what it
Well, I
is.
totally understand.
Yeah.
That's why I'm making my point, because
Okay.
I think it's wrong. I think we need to have a process where we can have that, as a board, we can have that conversation. That's all I'm saying.
So moving forward, what I'd like to do is, I agree with you. If I were the four people that are on this committee, I'd want to know what's going on in all times. And that's, I think, the biggest part of this. So as we progress, as we have information, I'm going to make sure it gets to everyone. And then if you have questions before we're bringing it to you for a vote, we can get that information to you. Because I understand completely, especially if you have no knowledge about any of, I don't have any idea what all this stuff is that's going on. That's why I lean on John. But if you know, but the rest of you may, you know, I know there's some things in here I read and I'm like, what is that? So we need to get those answers to you before we're bringing it to you, you know, for that vote. So you understand completely with the package. We probably won't have much discussion at that point if you're getting all the information you want to have.
And,
So that's going to be.
and just to add to that, whenever possible, if it could be for future action, so you have time to process.
If it's possible.
If possible, sometimes it speed-wise,
Why not?
but-
And we can roll around and talk about it, and then you can debate it and all that, because unless it's time sensitive, and some of that
Right.
was to get the orders, but again, it can't be on every project that we gotta have it today, and I
So whenever possible. I think
Yeah, but in a future action, you might not have 100% of the information at it, but you can say, these are the projects. We don't have the final dollars. We're going to get them next week, but this is what we're doing. And then you can ask questions like, what is this again?
Yeah.
And process a little bit. So maybe that's just, we'll work on that.
Dr. Krebs called me with that concern today, and I told her, I said, that's on me. I've been under the impression since this began that the process was clear it through the bond committee and it will come directly for action in front of the board. So that's how I've handled everything up to this point. But if the board consensus, and it sounds like we're headed that direction, is that you'd like to see it come through the bond committee and go to future action first, we can do that. We just need to know it up front because we have to back things up and be ready ahead of time. And so it takes some time. Now as time allows, some things will
I think
not.
what I say to that is if time doesn't allow, there's no reason I can't get this information to everyone on this board, so you can still review it.
Yeah.
If time doesn't allow, there's still be plenty of time, there's usually at least a week
Yeah,
for
and
them
it's,
to ask any questions they want, and we can figure it out before it has to.
But
it's just a little different than how we've been operating, but if the board would feel more comfortable, I understand that.
But we have a work session on the 28th. So at the 28th, if there's anything that's going to be on the 14th, let's talk about it, whatever information we have. So, okay.
We have a meeting.
I don't think there's anything pressing in the near future that I can think of. I don't think there's any orders
How I feel
or
about it too is if
contracts.
we're all involved in it and we can all be part of the success. Well, that's part of it, really. And that's, so I think that would be good. But I do believe though, the bond committee and the committee as it brings this stuff forward, we need to have confidence. Like again, you asked me a question, I transferred it to Dr. Darga, I gave you the truth. I sat back and watched two people from the community college meet with Dr. Darga, and I backed away from the table just a little bit, saying their expertise trumps mine today, and I'm gonna figure out what these professional educators have in mind, and I'll figure, and I trust what they were doing. That was the expertise that I brought to the board tonight, and Bill did the same. So I think I hope you have confidence in that, and it's not just like a free for all. Those men are very serious about getting the best program possible for our kids. All the confidence. And I think the bond committee has to have some framework and bring things to the board that that's the case. But I think we can agree that when there's these big expenditures outside of the normal scope, everybody should be aware and be able to put a stamp on it and say, yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
Okay. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? That passes 7-0. That brings us to item K, 2019 Bond Program Technology Purchases. Mr. Ingleter.
Yep, this was technology inside of the bond program for technology. We had the replacement of the iMac labs. These are related to the graphics programs at both the high school and the middle school. We're replacing that equipment that ranges between 5 and 10 years old at this point. These machines were spec'd by the instructors themselves and vertically integrated between the two programs. So they are being purchased through the REMC Saves bid program so that all the bidding requirements have already been met. Inside of the technology portion, we're well within the budget on this. I think we had budgeted about $195,000, so we're significantly under at this point.
Thank you. We have a motion. Moved by Mr. Stahl, supported by Dr. Krebs. Any discussion?
One thing, I didn't see any program where they were gonna come and show us what they were getting and what the other options were. How did we fend on that?
Yeah, I mean, getting someone from Apple to fly out here to show us the computer wasn't gonna
I was thinking
happen.
of our instructors that picked them out.
They didn't, I thought you were talking about someone from the vendor, so we didn't do that. But I did talk with Nick and Carney, and they had picked out, they said they had spec'd everything out for what they needed for scaling it out into the future. Certainly it'll only last so long, but.
All right, thank you.
I have one
Ms. Reed?
question.
Yeah.
what are we expecting as far as delivery time frame goes?
That's why we're doing it now, is we're gonna hopefully get them by summer, so we can install them for next fall.
Thank you.
That's, the lead time on them right now is rather significant, so.
I have one other question on there.
Yep.
Is the high school talking to the middle school on this technology so that the students, as they move up?
Yep, that's why I said it in fancy terms, but I said they'd vertically integrated the two programs, but yep.
Kind of picked that up.
They-
That's why I wanted the board to know. because
They were going,
That miscommunication has been going on here a long time. They don't communicate with each other on program development, programs as they move to the high school. And now are we remedying that through curriculum? I can ask Ms. Mosier that specifically. Are
Yep.
we working these programs together? And
That's why they're actually working together right now with this. This was both Nick and then Sean working with the graphic arts at the Scranton, specifically for this.
help us with our STEAM initiative as well. That's going to be the critical link, is that we change the process on that, where we meet and we organize and they have succession, they move from one program to the next and we have a vision. So we'll call this part of that vision then, so I'm gonna go with it, even though I didn't get a presentation on the computers.
sorry about that.
Next time I won't. I'll do it this time. I know those guys are professionals, they know what they're doing. I'm just looking at it so the board knows, because we're gonna be spending more money on this stuff, more money to keep up in front of it. It'll be a continuous expenditure, it'll be nonstop. And confidence that we can do that. The stuff is what it's just gonna take just that time.
All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Passes 7-0. The next item, L, 2019 Bond Program, Phase 4 Contract Awards. Mr. Ingleter?
Yep, so we did go out for bid for Phase 4. We did open bids on January 21st. This is related to a myriad of different things, but mostly two different categories. One is the STEAM renovations that are happening at Malpe and the elementary schools. That's been in the works for quite some time. And then the other portion of it is the asphalt repair and replacement at several buildings throughout the district. Not all of them, but the majority of them. And excluding Scranton, which is still in the works. That one got delayed as we tried to come up with a better design for how that was going to operate. But that one will get pushed off to next summer. But these are the bids that were opened. We did not have as good of coverage on this bid process as we would have liked or that we have seen in the past. A lot of contractors are just full with work right now. So the bid prices didn't come in as nice as we had seen in the past, but that's why we have contingency dollars in order to absorb that and get done the projects that we put together in the bond app.
All right. Do we have a motion? Mr. Stahl? Support by Mr. Conley. Any discussion?
I had a lot of questions from other board members as to what all this was for. I wasn't 100% sure, so I've gone through it with Mike. The demolition is throughout all of these projects. The masonry is multimedia hallways, not exclusively, but that's the majority of it. Spencer Brothers, the general trades, their doors and et cetera throughout. The glazing is windows in the cafeteria, in media center, and cafeteria of Malpe. Drywall framing, steam throughout. The flooring, Hilton hallways, carpet, the media centers. Painting is all throughout. Ceramic tile, Hawkins bathroom primarily. Fire protection is all throughout. What that is where they lower the fire sprinklers to the new ceilings primarily. Plumbing is Hawkins bathrooms and miscellaneous. HVAC is throughout. Electrical is throughout. And then the asphalt is mostly, it's the 7th Street end there that is part of the school district that is horrible as you're driving back around to the auto lab. And then Spencer parking lot, Hilton, Miller, and high school sports. Okay. Clarifies a little better where those
Yeah, if anybody has specific questions, I know Ken and John have both been through multiple page turns on what steam renovations. Bill, I know you're involved, but I know you were sick a couple times during that stuff, so.
One more note. No surprise to you. The EV chargers, and it's just a difference of belief, I guess, if you will, between John and I just wanted out for the entire board. These chargers, these are electric vehicle chargers. And the figure that you see here, this part.
It's on the far right.
Page 88, page 88. That's $75,000. I did clarify with Bernie, our manager, that that is just the cost of those units. So there's additional costs. These are going to be spread out throughout the district if approved, at all of the elementary schools, the intermediate school, and the middle school, and a couple of them also to the high school, right? Okay.
With expandability.
And this cost that you don't see there is, there's also going to be a guesstimate would be $50,000 to another $100,000 for trenching and running conduit out there and finding an electrical source and that kind of thing. Now, I understand what John is doing. He wants to get our kids throughout the district exposed to this kind of stuff. I guess my difference in opinion is that I believe that's up to the automotive industry and gas stations in America to get us up there. I just don't want to see these sitting there being used at our expense throughout the district. That's my concern, and I'll leave it out there for the rest of it.
So as a point of clarification, you're saying that within the power bid of the $999,795, that includes $75,000 for the electric vehicle charges?
I'm not 100% sure if that
Yes.
was included in there?
Yes.
Okay. So, but it is just for the units themselves. It doesn't include the electrical work and the piping and that kind of stuff. That's to be determined yet. And, you know, they're going through driveways in some cases, that kind of thing. So it's not going to be a really cheap endeavor.
But I don't think you're really telling the full story, because in all honesty, these could be generating revenue for the school district.
I know that was going to be my next step. Now there's
Well, that's why I'm bringing it up. So, you know, these could be easily have meters on them where people could swipe their cards. And as they're there parking, they could swipe it and plug in and generate. They would charge a card, they could generate revenue for the district as they're sitting there charging. So
my question,
realistically, there's a chance that they could pay for themselves over a period of time.
There's a guarantee that if we put those units on them, just like any business that runs a Visa or swipe card, we would have a forever fee for this stuff as long as it's hooked up. Whether people are using them or not, we're going to pay a monthly fee to have the Visa hook up to it and a charge per card. So I know that we've had the discussion that we could maybe charge more than it costs us to make money with it, but how do you even determine what that is and how much useful it will be? We might have 5 or 6 of these things doing nothing except being charged to a Visa account for many years.
It's $1 a month, right?
No, I don't think it's $1
$1 a day.
There's a monthly fee of
$60 a year.
$40.
Was it
360 a year.
Yeah, per unit.
So
$360 a year premium.
So when you say people, are you talking about like students and staff, or is it
That's
for
it.
the public?
for the
Could be
fee.
either one.
Yeah.
But they have to charge, they have to pay. We're not paying for it. So the criteria on these meters, this is a good question Ken has. This is very valid. Is how far do we go with the steam ideas, and what's the idea and what's the tail side? This is out on the edge of, it's very important though, because we all know that GM has committed their entire build division to electric vehicles. Okay, let's keep this in mind. We are a GM community. The proving grounds, the largest proving grounds in the world, is just a few miles towards Milford. Okay, it's it, number one. So we are, whether we like it or not, this is where we live, this is what we do. And the board members bring their positions to the board of all different backgrounds. And so when I pitched this originally, it's been on the books for a year, Bill? 2 years? Longer than that, since we started, since the beginning. It's just coming to a head now for some reason. I think in the criteria that I was given is, one, the school doesn't pay for this, the electricity. So I talked to the engineers, designers, and we have to have a system that people can't just go like right now at the high school, you can plug in and use our charger for free.
That's what they do right now.
Yeah, and they can.
And we've
we're
asked
paying-
more than once to have a timer put on there, and so far it still hasn't happened.
So these are things, but this is important because who's managing, who's taking care of, it's another task, who's going to do this, and how important really is it? Well, our teachers will be driving cars that are electric. They may need to charge their cars to get home. Okay, our people, our community, this is how it's going, and there's no way around this. So it's like, when do you do it? Do you have to do it? No, you do not have to do this. This is an optional thing to do. But through the course of things, I met with Lindhout and the person in charge of the EV chargers, and we gave him the requirements. I was given the requirements that we couldn't be charging cars for free for the whole town. Those requirements have been met. We aren't going to charge cars for free. You have to pay. If you want to use one of our electric vehicle chargers, you have to pay. So to the pay that enough that Ken's happy with that, that's why there's, I guess, 3 people on the bond committee. We could have 2 that agreed and 1 that disagreed, and we bring it in front of the board, and these are the reasons to or not to do something. At this point, the $75,000, which again, at the STEAM Center at the high school, the infrastructure charges are virtually should be 0, but just so you know, they built it without them. Just so you guys are all aware. They were designed in to be built in, and they built them without it. And we just found that out recently. I'm like, where are they? I go over there and I'm walking around, and I've been there several times. I just made this assumption that they'd be, hey, there's our electric car charger sitting there ready to go. Well, they forgot them.
It's because the engineer took notes but forgot to put them on the drawings.
And we approved them. We all approved them to be did. We all, the STEAM Center is good to go. It wasn't a question of where we wanted. We wanted electric vehicle chargers there. We're going to have presentations with electric vehicles. We're going to be doing a lot of stuff, in my opinion, circled around that. Our industry education partners have kind of led us in a real good direction in that way, and it's going to happen. So we're dealing with that too, but they'll be put in, and we're not going to have to pay additional fees, correct, Bill? They're going to cut them up and do it without, we're going to see what happens. They missed it, correct, Ken? They were on the prints. We stamped them. We agreed to them. Oh, we missed it. So in these other cases, though, as they're built into the STEAM centers and the other schools, be it Scranton Middle School, be it at the grade schools, it's the board's choice. This is not one person can say we have to do this, because this is absolutely optional. And the only thing I'm going to say this, and you know me, I'm trying to see tonight, I'm trying to be good. You had a little longer than this to bring it up, not tonight. We could have done this.
Well, John, I was always aware of the high school ones. I don't know where the ones at the elementary school.
They've been on there since we started. I know, I got that. It's fair, but it'd been easier to have it. So maybe if there's anything.
That was the only reason my alarm bells went.
Well, I'm good. There's no real alarm. If the idea, though, you're not wrong about infrastructure, you're correct. There's costs associated because it's not like we're under construction on those sites in the area we're going to put the chargers. So you got a tunnel under, but they do soil borings underneath stuff without ripping everything out if they're creative. Those soil borings are getting pretty darn savvy now to go under things.
I just think.
I don't have a problem with it.
I think let's say it's another $100,000.
Could be.
At what point will we ever recoup that cost, even if we're charging extra for electricity than they would get at home if they're charging their cars? There's no way to know, because they may never get used, or they might be a huge success at one building and not use it the other. I just don't want that yearly fee and these units sitting there not getting used. And to your point about getting people exposed, I don't believe, in my opinion, that elementary kids are gonna come to the high school going, I wanna see this technology from seeing those out there. So if that's part of it, I don't buy into that either, because mom's gonna go, they're gonna go, Mom, what's this? It's a car charger. Oh, okay. And they're gonna go about their day, and they're never gonna remember that again.
You would.
I had a few kids.
You would think that possibly. You
And
might.
especially at the elementary.
But as we take risk, like I said, this is one of those areas to take a risk or not take a risk, and expenditure of taxpayers' dollars. That's all this is. And it's a vision, from one party on this board, and I don't think we've gone wrong so far, like it's brought up in historical sense. And the goal is to put it in front of And like we talked about, no different than the school psychologist, that we wanted them to teach to help to move forward. This is all this is a fashion in that, and get in the swing of it. We are behind. Michigan is behind, ranked less than 40th in the nation. Okay, our school system is ranked at the top of that number and potentially in the top in other parts in the nation. But let's just be real about what we've done as industrial people and people that build things every day that we should be geared towards more than we have been. We've been delinquent. Okay, that's just my opinion.
100% on that.
I know that. I know that. So in this, then, we're going to take some risks. We're going to take some chances to make it a better place for these kids. So as we leave it, I found an old videotape when I got sworn in originally, and I looked at who was on the school board, and actually I sent it to the superintendent, so he's got it. It was kind of interesting to see the changes. Okay, we've changed for the better. I mean, big time. This school district, from when we started on these projects years ago, has improved. I would suggest that we are continuing to do that. Tonight is another form of an improvement. But like I said, for me, if I heard that 3 months ago, I'd have a better position tonight to discuss it. So Ken, in respect to what you're saying, we move that for discussion in our meeting, in our project meeting coming up. Approve everything else and bring up this thing and have the data. We can have the person that's spec'd out the car chargers, what they're going to cost, what they can generate. And that could be a perfect one to do that with, but not hold this other stuff up.
So the recommendation is to withdraw the EVs, so there could be more discussion.
Discussion,
to move
sure,
forward
why
with the
not?
other part. Is that?
Because it's not going to stop the project. And the other stuff can continue on.
It's exactly $75,000 that is in that.
This portion.
And that's the thing, we don't have the back.
I'm not so sure of that.
Well, that's my, see, we don't have the information. And so that's the problem, is that we're hamstrung in being able to have an informative discussion about that.
What do you think?
What's that?
What is it you're thinking?
Is that what's in the electrical bid?
That's what Bernie indicated was actually from the contract. That's what.
That there's $75,000 carried for chargers? How many chargers?
It's two per unit expandable. Is
So-
how I asked him to do it, because I.
So
like-
what's that?
One for each elementary, intermediate, middle school.
Right.
And
So there was one for
additional
each
one or
elementary
two
or
for
two
high
for
school.
each elementary?
I think there's 2 chargers for each elementary school. One unit that can be expanded, that would be, one unit has 2 chargers on it,
Well,
the way I
it's
understand
either
it.
double or it's not.
Yeah, the way I understand it. But like I said, in a clarification of that though, you know, these folks are the ones that we're spending, kind of like
I
the
think we
computers.
better pull the electrical bid and look and see how many chargers, if
Right.
there's any in there.
So it sounds like there's a lot of questions on this. Perhaps you can move forward with the others and
Well,
pull out anything related to
I would
electric
suggest we
charging.
move forward with the other bids and just not approve the electrical yet.
Because I have some questions just from the administration about things like who is actually going to, run the business of all these cards and all these type of things. And I know I had heard ideas about marketing classes assisting, but kids come and go. And so a little bit more dialogue around some of those
I think
type
it's
of
a
things would be
business.
appreciated from the
It goes
administrative
right to
side
his
too.
office, right there. At the end of the day, it goes to his office.
Yeah, it goes too, but who's managing that and processing? I mean, it's
Pretty low.
if you had a gas station, so there's quite a bit of,
It's pretty low key though. It's a monthly statement, but it is another task.
Well, and it's also, depending on how you do this, if you actually want to cover the cost of it, you're inviting the public onto the parking lots during school hours. Is that, I mean?
We're not inviting them, but if they show up, they can use them. Not going to run an ad and say, here they are, because we didn't take federal money or state money, because some are. They took big grants to put these in at no charge.
Are teachers coming up in the middle of the day using their vehicles? They only have it for a few times.
Plug it in and they can stay on it all.
All
It's,
day and
they can do,
Yeah.
I envision it more for teachers of the future coming
so
that
do I. So do
are
I.
going to drive electric
They're driving
vehicles to
electric
work
cars.
and they're going to need a place
There
to
is
plug
no
in.
question in my mind. They're
Well,
driving their, yeah.
So we have
I mean, I
our-
definitely see the
Yeah.
value of having this as part of this STEAM center because of the work that I expect is going to evolve with the students there. So there's I can definitely see the line from our educational purpose to the value of these machines in the high school setting. Perhaps at Scranton as well as we expand the STEAM offering over there. I'm not quite so sure about the elementary connection there. I'm definitely looking forward to some further conversation
You can put
on that piece of it.
Put them at the doorway and just have them look at them when they walk by. You can put that.
So we
Charge
can
up the
gather
kid
more
cards.
information on all of this stuff for that project discussion on the 28th.
Again, I think we should approve all of the contracts other than the electrical contract and pull the bid out to review exactly what is in there and what the amounts are. Other than that, approve the rest of the awards for the rest of the subcontractors.
Does it have to go to whoever made the original motion to modify it?
Well, but before we get there, because I just want to see if anyone else has any questions. I've got some more.
I've got questions about other parts of
That's, I do too. So
Okay.
before we get to modifying the motion, Mr. Reed?
So this is another one that's over budget. So I'm looking for some detail on what's over budget and how that relates to the overall budgets for those particular projects.
Right, so this one is an overall, so phase 4 itself, or as we put the dollars together for the projects that are here from the bond app, it is over those budgets in the bond app. That is why the contingency was originally baked into the bond period, is to handle these situations when you have an overrun. And like I said, that contingency pool goes up and down, whether you save money or
Add
use money.
17% to that.
So, yeah.
That's a contingency amount.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
And then see if it's over.
is this over just because the cost of what we intended to have done turned out to be more than we originally budgeted for? Or have we added projects to this that were not part of the original plan?
I think the short answer to that is probably a little bit of both. But for the most part, I'd just say that the bids came in over what we were anticipating they were going to be. I think there's been a lot of movement in and out of the projects as the design team continued to work with it and work with the schools and what was there. I mean, but I guess the bottom line is the bids were more than what we were anticipating.
This was budgeted 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have.
That's
my
why
own-
you can add 17% to it, and that's what a contingency is for.
Sure. Just trying to tell the difference between things cost more now than they did 2 years ago when we were giving very rough estimates, because I know those were very rough estimates to start the process, versus we decided to do an extra
Added to it.
whatever.
Added to it.
They were very rough estimates, and the projects hadn't been fleshed out at that point. As they worked with each school and their teams, and I mean, there's been a whole lot of back and forth, and John coming in and more back and forth, and so yeah, they've changed from the original, which wasn't a whole lot more than this is what we want to do, but I don't think there was a fleshed out program or
You're right,
project
yeah.
that was there.
The more that gets drawn on paper, the tighter the bids get. So you got to think at the very beginning when you're putting this together 2.5 years ago, there was nothing on paper other than a vision. Now there's, these are construction documents, which are very detailed documents that shows existing conditions, what's underground, partially soil conditions, different things like that there was no clue of 2.5 years ago. So the farther along the design process, the more refined the price gets. And this is now, since they're at CDs or construction documents, this is about the best of the prices are going to get.
Yeah,
But
and
you
then-
could take that and add 17% to it as what we carried for a contingency, and I doubt you'd be over the budget then.
Thank you.
I can say for certain that we've been able to implement some things that are positive to the programs. And with the cost though, if we look at what the cost of anything is today, I'm going to use a number. For instance, a garage door was $2,400. Now it's $5,000 for the same garage door over only 4 years. So I think we've seen that in so these trades coming in, we were under these bids that came in 2 years ago. You guys had bid stuff, it was way under. And now it's over. Everything's coming in on the edge of over.
That's
And
just a
the number of
simple
people
little
bidding
thing.
on the projects is the same way. We had the low turnout on the bids. Well, they're at capacity. So what's happening is the prices can continue to go up. I can share with you in recent experience, the same thing, a painter that I paid $4,000 to do a whole house with materials, had to do it again. It was over $6,000 without materials to do the same job. So we're seeing it. And it's going to show up here too on everything we're doing, including that equipment stuff, all these equipment purchases, equipment. Oh my goodness, look at the car costs and parts for the cars. Everything, a tire that should be $90 is $180. It's on everything. So when will that change? Who would know? We're stuck right in the middle of it. But as we move forward, I mean, I think what I've seen with the school support with most all of our schools, and the goal was to give them fair and balanced opportunities in each school. I think we're achieving that at a very high degree. And then the development of the program, which has been brought up, those developing things that get to develop from there, they'll have the same kind of launch pads, and it'll need more people. And then again, more people that are trained and geared for it. And I mean, again, if there's 60 to 70% of the jobs are in these categories, we need to be looking at them all. And that falls back to the car chargers. And if I get one thing thrown out, if we get 99% in, I won't take offense to it. So, but I think we can get a case for them. I think that we could listen to the presentation from the people that have the knowledge about how they're used. And if they can fundamentally pay for themselves, and we can overload Mike some more, why not? Let's dump it on him. He can do it. He gets, just add him, give him a bonus. He can have a car charger bonus week.
I have one more question on that, as long as we're researching it. Is it possible that selling electricity for cars needs a license?
Everything needs a license.
Gas stations need a license to
Everything.
sell gas? I don't know. If we're selling something, do we need a license?
Everything,
I have no idea.
you know,
We better get a permit for that popcorn at the girls' basketball game.
No, we don't know about that. That's true.
health department.
All right, any further questions?
Okay.
That's
That's a dime a bag.
So the question I have, so on the site work, I understand that this covers site work or asphalting at various locations in the district. Does this also include the site work for the transportation center?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So when we had our meeting in November, one of the issues I raised when we were talking about how much contingency dollars we had left, what was in the original scope, what is still need to be completed, I pointed out the fact that our original bond application had the replacement of the work for the asphalt at the transportation center. And we're limited by law. If we don't do what we applied for in the bond, then there's statutory requirements as to what we can and cannot do with those dollars. We just can't say, well, we applied for it this way, but we're going to not do that and put the money elsewhere. So when I
We can
raised
give
that
it back.
question, pardon me?
We can give it back.
Give it back. That's one of the options. That's right. So when I raised that issue, Bernie said as part of the bid package, they would put out an alternate because that wasn't done, and because there's going to be other site work that was going to be completed, that he would get an alternate for that.
So-
And then we could then make a decision as a board, are we going to give it back, or do we spend that money to fulfill that task? I don't see an alternate on here for what the process was agreed upon.
I'll address it with what I know at this point. So the transportation center did have an allowance for asphalt repair or asphalt replacement in it. And it was in there at a certain square footage. So there was a price allocated with that bond app. What was bid out was equivalent to that square footage. And they spec'd out what was the worst and done. So they did meet what was in the bond app. They did put that out to bid. Now so the pricing is back on doing that section. I think it's some of the east side of the lot
About
coming
3/4.
down all across the south end of things and a little bit back up the west side. And that's what was spec'd, and that was what was bid out. There was an alternate, and I think it was alternate 2 on our bid sheet. We had 3 separate alternates. We are asking to approve alternate 3, which is the square footage at the south end of 7th Street before you enter by the baseball field. that was alternate 3. We are asking that you approve that. As a committee, we decided that $40,000 was worth that cost or that work to be done. Alternate 2 was for the bus garage and to complete all of the lot. And I think that alternate came in, the bids were something like $1.1 million. So at the time, the committee didn't feel that that was an appropriate amount or an alternate to bring forth to the board. We still have that number. We have that bid pricing. If the board down the road here would like to entertain moving forward with that, we could certainly bring that back and do that. But to address what you were saying, it was put out to bid in accordance with what was in the bond app itself. And then that alternate was placed on there for the.
Because that's my biggest concern is because I was told when we had our November meeting that we didn't do before what was in the bond application.
I think
And we were considering this alternative, and I don't want to get in a situation where if we don't do an alternative, now we've got, whether it's $1.1 million or 700,000 that we have now stuck with this money that we're either gonna have to give back or, they can't be, just trying to reconcile the,
Yep.
What's really now contingency dollars versus what is money that should have been used to.
Yep. And I think the design team went back from that meeting because the bond committee was at that time considering not doing anything at the transportation and allocating that money elsewhere to, work with the other lots. So they did go back and sketch out and design something that fit the statutory requirements in the bond app
So I
itself.
have a question about that, because at our last bond meeting, there was an H like cutout of that parking lot. 2 of those legs were to accommodate putting it, rising up a couple of the drains and repatching that. And then the center, I'm not sure what the center was for.
The center is a concrete area where the buses park currently, so that's not even
So
asphalt.
we're only doing those strips then between?
Right, so there was a section along the east side that went between the manholes. That was spec'd. And then really the worst of the lot itself is the southeast corner and that whole south end, and then coming back around a little bit on the west end.
Well,
I'm
I guess
not,
my concern is
I'm
we
not
all-
saying more couldn't use it,
Oh,
but as
yeah.
far as what was spec'd out, we did get the alternate and it was pricey. So,
Okay, because my other concern is that thing is ready to blow up, if you will. I don't know how to better say it. If you're gonna be backing up asphalt trucks on it to patch these areas, we're gonna destroy more than we do good. I understand we're also putting new posts in and lights in the center, and that's all good, but that also is gonna create that kind of a thing. We might end up with the whole center is.
Why would you be backing asphalt trucks up on it?
Aren't we going to put some asphalt in that parking lot?
Well, who says you got to back up asphalt trucks on it? I mean, there's different ways of putting asphalt down. You're going to mill it first.
Right.
So
But
if
that
anything, that's
machine that
probably,
does that has the capability to bust up some of the already pretty brittle.
well, but that's what's going to be taken out. Is from about that manhole on the east side that's caved in about halfway down. And then on the south side and then coming back up on the west side.
I simply
So-
believe that they're probably gonna do more damage than they do good just driving the equipment on it. It's in bad shape. And my point is, do it or don't do it, but if we're gonna do it, let's do it right, not just pieces.
Well,
So, I mean, that's.
then if we're going to do it right, we ought to just mill the whole thing and leave it and not put any asphalt back in.
Well, I don't know about that, because we also have bus drivers that drive on it and equipment, and I don't know how that would work.
Okay, well, what's-
How do you get snow off of that?
Huh?
If you just make it millions, how do you plow?
You
it?
plow it just like you plow anything else.
yeah, you float the plow, but here, in that, what did we spend or what are we gonna spend? Like, and Roger has a valid point. So what was budgeted in the bond and how much is allocated to be spent on that parking lot?
transportation alone, it's somewhere around $500,000 or $600,000 is in the bond app for that.
Is in the bond application. How much
Yep.
did we allocate to spend on it?
I don't know that because the contractor's bid was for all of the sites at once. So,
Combined asphalt work.
yeah, so I
including-
don't,
Including 7th Street.
I don't have that breakout from the.
Well, maybe in this next meeting, we'd have that. We can know
Yeah,
what,
that'd be helpful.
maybe we add that to this for, well,
Well, the point being is what the square footage was in the bond app is what's being met at the bus garage.
Okay, but what about this issue, and the board doesn't know about this, most of them, because they came in, they spec'd it wrong. They spec'd it with 4 inches, and I called them on it, and I said, wait a minute, you're driving buses, remember? And we went to 6 and 8 inches.
That wasn't at the maintenance facility.
That was not at maintenance.
That's the driveway, it's.
Yeah, they bid it was 4 inches. It'd last for 2 years and be gone.
They didn't bid it at 4.
They didn't, or they were going to.
Right, they bid it at the thicker level.
So
So everything's incorporated.
Well, I guess
as
what I'm
it
also hearing is, we really would only need to put an additional $500,000 into it as to what we had said we were going to get the whole thing done.
No, the
million.
alternate is for everything else, and that's another 1.1.
See, that's, okay. But the work we're doing is spec'd at the right thickness, asphalt everywhere. We're fixed on those problems.
Correct.
Good.
And I do believe that the existing goes anywhere from 2 inches to a half an inch, right? It's bad.
It's what they call when they put paint on it.
Yeah.
They put that thin asphalt down.
That's why I'm concerned about what's gonna happen
It's-
with the little bit that we're talking.
Somehow we paid for that at some point in the life of this project. I got paid for it, but we're doing checking on that now. We have people out there watching what's going down and density studies and everything else, right? Didn't you pull asphalt the one time, Bill? You made them take it out. So we need to stay on that program so we get, I mean, we're paying for it and it's not going down. That cost of that stuff's not going down either. Everything's up. So how could we fix that, Roger? What would you be at? I mean, what's your thought? So you get an understanding.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think, obviously, the three of you are probably the most experienced from a construction standpoint, and there's questions to raise. I mean, it's hard for me to, and I'm sure the others feel the same way, to weigh in on whether we should or shouldn't, what we should or shouldn't do, and, with regard to, this particular item. I mean,
Concrete
I
everything.
personally think we should hold this back and have further conversation on the 28th as well, along with the electric.
You can, but there's a very good chance we could potentially miss the work for the summer.
If we wait 2 weeks, is that what they said?
We're late right now.
Is that true for the electrical as well, or just the asphalt?
The asphalt's more critical than the electrical is.
Get in the spot to do it.
Is this
Be-
something
be-
we could do?
Because the asphalt has to be scheduled.
Well, I mean,
Or-
yeah, I would agree that the asphalt, we're late in the bidding on the asphalt season.
Right.
And there's plenty of work for them to pick up if we decide not to. I know it seems a little bit silly to not be able to wait 2 weeks, but we're really pretty late. We
Want it done next
should
year's
have bid
season
that.
coming up.
Well, how about this as an option? So we're gonna be doing the Scranton asphalt work in the summer of 2023, right?
Yeah.
It would be the access road.
Yeah.
Right? And the lot, the Scranton work is gonna be done
Yes,
in 2023.
yes.
So is there any reason why we have to do the transportation center site work in 2022?
Well,
Why couldn't we just pull that out of this, approve everything else to go forward, and then roll the transportation center into the bid for the bid
It'll
package
cost more.
for Scranton?
Yeah.
It'll cost more
Why?
because everything goes up over the year.
My only, Roger, you can do that. My concern is that southeast corner of that lot is probably the worst asphalt we have in the district.
In the transportation center?
Yes,
And so is the work that's, if we got approved this, that part of it would be fixed?
that piece
Yes.
of it would be, yes.
So maybe you make it where you find out how much is being done. If you want to add more to it, you could add a scope of work instead of taking it away.
Yeah.
In 23.
And if you approve it right now, it's minimally going to be what's in it. So maybe 2 weeks from now, you talk about whether
Well,
you'd like
you
to
know-
move forward and maybe expand that project.
That could be an option if we went with this portion of it now, and then in 23, if there's additional dollars left and you wanted to go ahead and pave the rest of the bus parking lot with additional monies that are there, you could do that in 23.
It would make the most sense to do it in conjunction with the Scranton work that's being done.
So
But
you're kind of doing half now and half then. So that would be an option
Let's these people.
without holding things up.
the other thing, I know there's concern about the electric and you want some additional information, but couldn't we approve it as is and then take a credit back if the EVs are decided we want to take them out?
You could.
The only way we take a credit back is if the dollar amounts broke out. Otherwise, we'll get nailed.
You'll get some.
75,000.
We'll get half our money back.
I think you should wait.
Yeah.
So
All right, so.
So for the asphalt, what all are we covering with this right now? The part of the transportation center.
Yeah, part of the transportation center, Spencer, the east lot at Spencer is to be redone.
Does that take care of the whole issue? That's not necessarily
No,
the whole.
that's not related to any traffic studies
Okay,
or
that's
whatever.
right.
That's just what's scheduled in the bond is the east lot. The west lot was done at the last bond. Hilton, that entire front lot on the north side, as well as the north end of the side parking lot, the big one, because the south end of that lot was done with the last bond. And then that would include redoing the lighting for that parking lot. So that's all.
you
to
got
be
Miller
done.
in it.
Miller, everything except that little stub parking lot on the east side of the building will all get taken out and replaced.
7th Street.
That section of 7th Street or the bottom end of 7th Street that we talked about, as well as the triangle lot down next to the lake that is
the
so
back
bad
parking lot.
now. That leads to that new road, right behind the building, between the building and the lake. There's a section that looks like a triangle. That portion of the lot is set to be done in this.
I thought we weren't doing that. We are doing that?
No, we are doing that.
You know, we got
That's-
that manhole.
There's-
That's
okay.
just sinking into the ground. And it's
Right.
Yeah, that's to be redone.
So is the 7th Street going all the way to the northeast corner of the high school property, or is it?
It's Roger. It's just a little section.
Just in front of where the
Where the
bus
2-foot
garage
potholes
or
are.
the old bus garage is.
Yeah, city wants-
Before the baseball field and just by the White House.
It's terrible.
It's terrible and it's ours, but we need to.
So then, in 2023, we're talking about the Scranton Access Road, the traffic study for Spencer, and then the Horny Maltby stuff too. So
And
that's
that-
kind of all pushing,
well,
that's not any of. in
Yeah,
here.
Well, the
that's
Scranton parking lot. as
that's
well.
yet to be determined, right?
Scranton
But
parking lot.
but
is- yeah.
2023 will be the Scranton parking lot itself, plus putting in an access road from Lee Road down.
That's been separated in the end where the buses are gonna turn around is all part of the first one, right? And then.
Well,
Right.
all as one project.
Right.
Yeah. So that just got pushed off as the design got later and later.
And we're currently getting information on the traffic study for Spencer and Horny Maltby, correct?
Yeah, correct. I believe we're supposed to be getting that report. He told me by early this week. So tomorrow's the end of early. So hopefully tomorrow. So,
In asphalt then, so we have how much budgeted in total scope of the bond for asphalt work?
It was like $7.2 million or something like that in total asphalt.
Okay. And at this juncture, we're slated to spend all 7.2 million of that?
The Scranton piece hasn't been done yet, and that was the largest section of that. I think Scranton had 2.5 in there
With the road?
with the
With the
road.
road.
So I think, I mean, I haven't looked at it in that aspect, but I would
Well, I think
imagine
maybe
that
this next meeting, we should probably look at where we're
we're
at.
probably a little bit under on the overall asphalt piece of it, but I think, I mean, I'm not certain on that right now,
Well, again,
What I remember, we were about $1 million under, I think.
on the asphalt piece. I think that's probably about right, because we're looking at about 5 million here right now. And it was 6 or 7 million. in
But
there.
don't forget, that's only based on like in SD design on the access road.
Yes.
But that does have money in there for that.
Yes.
So we're spending a huge amount of money on asphalt that we, like Roger's concerned, so there's a lot going out. And I guess my point would be every time they roll over it, somehow the kids get a new school book because they go over it. That's all. Sorry. Yes, I know. I'm just talking out loud. Okay, there's signs on each piece of asphalt that trigger the car to do something. All right, so they get more education from all that asphalt.
All right, so there's gonna be a modification of the pending motion to withdraw the
Electrical.
That's what I would do.
I'll make the motion
Support.
to amend.
So amend, supported by Mr. Conley. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? That passes 7-0. So we approve.
All the sub trades other than electrical.
Is there a possibility of getting that approved at the workshop?
Well, I think if we know what's in the bid,
Yeah, I just want to make sure we can keep that moving. I just,
If you can, if
I
we
agree.
can
Yeah, Good
get
idea.
the information, then on the agenda, we can just have that as a single action item for consideration.
I just wanted to make sure the board was on board with that idea before we brought it forward and did that.
It's a good step if we can analyze the details, figure out where we want to go.
I mean, you want to know how many chargers are in the bid
These guys.
and if there's labor included in it, right?
I was all good how they
And
presented,
whether
but Ken
site
brought up
work
the new point,
would be
what it
necessary
costed
to
actually
put them.
to put them in. It wasn't
Yeah.
built into it.
Yeah, it's just, according to Bernie, that's just the cost of the machine.
And of course, they didn't tell me that either, but at the same
I
point,
don't know how many. So.
yeah, I'm good with it.
All right, so that would be the plan for 28 then.
And get it finished and move forward.
So that moves us to item M, mechanical work. Mr. Ingleton.
All right, last thing here. Sorry. So the mechanical work, we have two mechanical issues in the district. One, the boiler plants at Malpe, and two, 3 exhaust units over the high school cafeteria that are in desperate need of replacement. They haven't been necessarily addressed in any of the bond planning to date, and they really need to be done. So I actually had budgeted for these projects to be done out of the general fund back last summer when we passed the budget. Just being proactive and knowing it needed to be done, and we had a little bit of extra funds that we were able to do that. So I had budgeted in there $350,000 to replace the Malpe boilers and another $105,000 to replace the mechanical units over the high school cafeteria. We have gotten both CSM and Johnson & Wood are under contract with us currently for mechanical work. I did get both of them to bid this out. CSM numbers came in the better on both projects. So I am asking the board to approve entering into a change order with CSM to get these projects done and complete by this summer.
All right, we have a motion.
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Mr. Stahl, supported by Mr. Conley. Any discussion?
Yeah, Roger, we had discussed these in the bond committee, not as a bond item, but outside of the bond items. And the idea was to commonize the systems within our school system and have the same manufacturer and get because we're apparently we were sold at one time 10 years ago, a kind of a boiler system that didn't work out very well. And we're down to the last 2 of them that we've cannibalized parts from all the parts, the ones we took out to keep these others running. So as a proactive maintenance move to replace them before they failed, they're on they just can't get spare parts now. It's just like a computer that's outdated. For some reason, and I understand the company that actually made these machines went out of business shortly after they sold them to us. Is that correct? Okay.
They stopped manufacturing this line not long after that.
Got kind of hung on those 10 years ago, and this is as much time as the maintenance guys want to try to squeeze out of them. And so I supported it, and as well as the hoods and maintenance items. Again, like I said, I don't know how these boilers are going to get textbooks in the kids' hands, but they'll keep them warm. And I guess that's what we're supposed to do too. So that's why I got behind it. I thought it was a good idea, and we can then standardize what we're doing.
Further? Just for a point of clarification, it's 3 boilers and 3 exhaust units?
That's correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Not
And-
part of the bond, though. It's
No,
general
right,
fund.
and this is general fund dollars, this is not.
It is general fund dollars, yep.
And just so point of clarification, in the packet on page 102.
At the bottom,
Right,
that's,
the bottom
that's
was
a,
to approve the assorted furniture for.
Yeah.
So the motion really is to approve the purchase of 3 boilers and 3 exhaust units with a not to exceed amount of $278,974.
it's to enter into a change order with CSM for those, but yes. Yeah. I'm guilty of reusing templates a lot of
Just
times.
wanted to be, I just wanted to be clear.
Basically, you're writing a check for him and we're approving it.
Yeah.
To enter into change order for the purchase of 3 boilers, 3 exhaust units in an amount not to exceed $278,974.
Yes.
All right,
So this was not in the original bond, but where's the money, the funds? coming
From the
from?
from the
fund.
general
It
fund.
is, so it's coming from the general fund and not the bond.
Correct, and it has been budgeted all year for this. Just, we got them to get us our quotes and we're ready to move forward with it. As soon as heating season is done, they will, well, actually before that, they'll start doing one at a time. Because there's 3 boilers in there, they don't need all 3 to get the job done, so
and so and it was budgeted for 350,000, is that right?
that's
This
correct.
comes in at 278.
Yeah,
That almost
well,
pays for our extra
well,
liaison.
actually, the boilers,
For 1 year, right?
the boilers themselves come in at 196 and I had budgeted 350 for them, so
Oh, wow.
yeah, we're in,
2 years.
we're plenty of good shape for that.
All right, all those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 7-0, and that concludes our for action portion of our agenda. Moves us into for future action. Item A, budget amendment update. Mr. Ingleton.
You know, I'm tired, so I'm gonna keep this short. We're in the process of doing a budget amendment. I look to bring that to you at the March meeting. On top of that, just look for that coming as we complete our work on that. Also, just for the board's edification, the governor did drop her budget recommendation last week. It's a very extraordinary budget for education. Nothing I've seen in 20 plus years, working with schools. But whether again, it's simply a proposal. It has to go through the legislature and in the bargaining process. I will tell you, it's very rich. Unfortunately, most people forget that it's just a proposal. So I've taken a ton of inquiries on when people will receive their retention bonuses already, but unfortunately, we'll just see if that comes to fruition or not. But anyway, the budget that she's proposed is very good for public education if it were to go through as is. I think it's $435 per student coming, that she's recommended. That's somewhere around $3.7 million additional in funding for Brighton area schools. We'll see what shakes out in the process, but there are significant dollars in the revenues for the state, not only bolstered by the federal dollars that have been flowing unendingly out of the federal government, but also, with everything that's happening coming out of the pandemic, people buying stuff instead of going and doing, experiences that don't have taxes coming in. There's a whole lot of things. Inflationary pressures actually drive those costs up as well. So we all know inflation is there. So anyway, the dollars are there for some significant investments into education. What shakes out is yet to be seen. So we'll start looking at it now that the governor has dropped it for next year's budget. We'll start beginning to formulate ideas and plans, but with a whole bunch of hold back as we wait to see what actually comes to fruition from their negotiating process. That's all I have for tonight.
So if in fact we remain flat and all this dream sheet of election year doesn't happen, and we just remain at what we had from last year.
Yep.
Which is entirely possible.
Sure.
So where do we stand if we look at a projection from there? Are we digging into that 3.5 million we get from shared services? Are we running level? Where are we at? We've approved a lot of expenses tonight.
I think we're actually running pretty well still.
Are we flat, not
Yeah,
going
we're-
deficit?
I don't think we're eating into anything.
So we'll know that when you bring back your stuff next month?
Yeah.
Okay. And then that's.
I
soon
mean,
enough.
that won't include projections into next year,
This is
but
the amendment for this year.
yeah.
Which is not for-
I won't have projections on next year just yet, but you'll get a sense of it from that budget that comes.
Well,
forward.
just as you start to dream, we do a dream sheet moving forward. That's the problem with school budgets, right?
Mhm.
You couldn't really plan on it, Roger. That's the problem. And you maybe have an A/B plan.
Right.
And if you're flat, or if this does happen, and then that's just how I'm looking at it.
Yeah, and
It's-
I am a conservative budgeter when it comes to the following year.
Okay.
That's
Thank
how
you.
I usually look at it.
Look forward to hearing your report. Thank
All
you.
right, any further discussion? All right, concludes the for future action and moves us to board reports.
If I could, I got a little one. I was lucky enough, it was my son's basketball practice at Scranton, and they were doing the Science Olympiad Awards. So I decided to sit there and watch that. Some pretty amazing kids in there. Just to name a few, I took pictures. 6th place in anatomy and physics, 3rd place in code busting, 4th in disease detection, 5th, don't ask me what all these are. Some of them you just gotta know what they are. 5th in electric right stuff, 5th in experimental design, the list goes on and on. And there was at least another 8 to 12 more items. But I asked the teacher if she'd come and propose it, and she said, well, there's at least 3 more rounds, and she'd love to propose it then. But these 4th, 5th, 6th, 3rd places, these are up against a couple hundred schools. So we were doing pretty good there. It was a really, really cool thing to see, and kids were pretty excited about it. They got anywhere from a ribbon to a plaque. So it was very cool to see that, and they're all really into it. So that says a lot for our science. So, that's it.
I've got one. I had a parent come to me and they had a situation last week in school, and it was regarding what their child was wearing in school in a middle school. And so I made a couple of notes, and I actually met the parent and the child. And so basically the teacher didn't like what the child was wearing and sent the child to the office. And then the office didn't like what the child was wearing and said, you have to take off that shirt. That's how it went. And the child was sent back to class. Apparently things went okay when he was sent back to class. But here's the situation. It's my interpretation that there's case law on this from our, at a very high level, that was not the correct thing to do. And there is also case law that in some circumstances, it would be the right thing to do. Meaning if the shirt was a threat or what said on the shirt was a threat. But according to our Supreme Court in the great United States of America, the Tinker case is the setting for what House has done. And it says that the Supreme Court has ruled public officials cannot censor students' expression unless they can reasonably forecast that the speech will substantially disrupt school activities. Now, to give to the superintendent, I brought the, we'll call it what the issue would have been, potentially. And when it can go through them, but there's laws on this, and this technically, I mean, the teacher didn't like what the student was wearing, that's fine. But there's laws that protect that student, and they're not jokes. And the one that they used in this Tinker case was about a 13-year-old. There's a picture of this woman that I'm going to give the superintendent that was actually the student that it happened to. She didn't support the Vietnam War when she was 13. Well, she was taken out of school and couldn't have that wristband on that said, I don't support the Vietnam War. And well, other people changed that entire thing for the entire future of our country. And they said, no, that student was allowed to wear that because she's a student or he's a student. So where the staff may not be able to do that, the students' First Amendment rights are protected. So I'm going to turn this over to the superintendent, and it's his responsibility, but I felt as a board member because the parent and the child were in a position they wanted to come and see me at my office. I didn't ask that. They showed up. And I'm glad they did, because this is very important. And my position on this is, if in fact we find that this was done incorrectly, then the repair to this could be a project for these students in that classroom where that young child was potentially embarrassed in front of his students, fellow students. And the project would be exactly about this case and what their rights are. So they learn what their rights are and how we protect them. Should that be the determination, I think that's the repair to it. And they can do a project. And possibly an apology to the student wouldn't be out of line, and their parent and his family. These are guaranteed, and these are civil rights violations. And we need to get a handle on this to make sure as we go forward that we're protecting our students, following our laws. And I think that we're going to find that we made a mistake on this one. But we're not, there's no one that's perfect. And I saw the intent as a citizen. I see the intent of the reason to try to censor this. But it doesn't fit the law. So we can't just go around making them up when we feel like it. So I'll pass this down to the superintendent, and he can let us know maybe at our next workshop meeting if we have to do anything more as a board. But I believe we have policies in place.
So I can respond right now if it's okay with you. Yeah. So I'm not an attorney, so I can't cite case law, and I would love to be able to run it by our attorney. But I know that we have latitude when it comes to things like profanity, vulgarity that are inappropriate in the school setting. And that would include things that allude to things that are inappropriate. We could make references that may on the surface mean one thing, but it means another thing. And so we do have latitude. I can check with our legal counsel on what latitude we have and what the legal foundation of that is. But I know that it's in our policies here as a district that profanity, vulgarity, and things that are, inappropriate in the school setting, that we do have latitude as administration. But I'd be happy to get a legal look at that and share that back out with you. But I believe that the administration exercise their authority under those policies and under with that intent. We do.
I guess that really is the point, is that if there's a problem, rather than somebody coming to a board member and then the board member just circumventing any, you gotta follow the channel. So
I agree.
There's nothing for us to debate in a vacuum about, we don't even know the details of the circumstance. And I can tell you that, you referenced the Supreme Court case, Mr. Connolly, in my 3 years of law school and my 30 years since then practicing law, there are very, very few situations where a single case by a single court is the end-all be-all that governs every circumstance. If that were the case, then there'd be a tenth of the lawyers that would actually be practicing law, because if it's that black and white, you don't need that many lawyers, right? The point being that
That would be okay.
there's
Sorry.
You can just look at one case and say,
No.
this is why.
And in this case, Roger, to be right up front, I totally support us discussing.
But
Here's-
I can get a legal review on the specific
Well,
case.
for the purpose, Roger, and I support kind of what you're saying, but the point is, though, that in my opinion, over these last many months, there's been a stretch on what we're supposed to do to children. Okay, and that includes this potting and quarantining. And then when do we say, and with a person that took enough effort to come in and say something, and that's where we come in as a board and people in the public, and we open our door to people. They call you, talk to them, and it's not always what we want to hear, because it's not. I'd rather not have to talk about it, but it's our job as elected officials, in my opinion, in the community that we live in, to bring stuff like this forward for discussion. And I think that the superintendent can address it. I believe that this particular case, knowing specifics about what happened, I think it's a very gray area, favoring on side of the student, my personal opinion. But again, it's up to administration. Like I said, they have the latitude to decide, but yet we can't break the law when we decide. because it goes in for one, it goes in for all. And I think that this is a perfect case to discuss. And if he believes and the superintendent supports what administration did and the teacher's position on that, then we go forward. And if we don't believe in that, we talk about it as a board. But I think that Dr. Outlaw will come up with a solution and come back and tell us what he thinks. Is that fair?
Sure, I can run it through an attorney.
I mean, and check it out. And I think that's fair to our student.
Yeah, but I'm happy to get that second opinion on it. But I think this one's going to be pretty clear. I
Good.
think that our policies allow this just because of what it referenced. So
I got it.
assuming that
say
we're
that.
talking about the same case.
We are.
Okay.
So thank you. Yes.
Anything further? The only thing I add, speaking of legal claims, as I think most of you knew, Dr. Outlaw, along with all the other superintendents and county officials, were sued by Yvonne Black, who's frequently at our meetings, claiming to be that Dr. Outlaw and the other superintendents violated the Open Meetings Act. And last Thursday, that case was dismissed as meritless. And so, one down. All right. That concludes all of the items we have on the agenda for this evening. And our next meeting will be our next workshop will be on February 28th at 6 o'clock. Our next regular meeting will be March 14th at 7 p.m. This meeting is adjourned.
You broke into that, she's not gonna like that.
From the dollars.